At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
What up, everybody? There's no better way to bring in a radio show in the month of March than by blasting Future's March Madness. It is the first of the month. By the end of the month, we're going to be knee-deep into the NCAA tournament. It's the Josh Graham Show with Denton Day sitting in. If you want to connect with the show, you can do so via telephone, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. If you want to get at me immediately, you can tweet me at the Denton Day. We're going to have plenty of time to get to your phone calls. We'll be opening up the phones periodically. 20 minutes from now, Emory Hunt is going to join. We'll get his thoughts after now that the Combine is kind of in the rearview mirror. We still got some offensive linemen working out today, but the majority of the Combine in the rearview mirror, and now we have nothing but pro days and the actual draft itself ahead of us on the NFL schedule. Free agency too, but in the draft process, we got pro days, we got the draft. So we'll talk with Emory Hunt, who impressed him this week in Indianapolis. Has that affected his board at all for some of maybe your favorite prospects or prospects you're hoping that your team ends up drafting? We are going to get to some football off the top here, but because we're ringing it in with March Madness, because it is the first of the month, we might as well celebrate a little bit of an upset going down in college basketball just moments ago. I love me Matt Painter at Purdue. I think from a basketball perspective, like just the X's and O's, he is a sensational head coach. Hot damn if I don't hate Purdue, though. Man, they have been the easiest team to write off in these discussions of who do you think can make a Final Four run? Who do you think can make an Elite Eight run? Hell, if you want to even extend that to Sweet 16, I don't think that we'll be seeing the Purdue Boilermakers there. They just lost to unranked Ohio State. Their second loss in a row. They lost to Michigan State at home in a game where you definitely got to be kicking yourself, but I'm a gambler, so I kind of look at things through the perspective of a gambling lens. And there are not very many times where the pure intentions of the gambler and the pure intentions of like the actual sport itself overlap. But I do feel like today should have been one of those for Purdue. You lose a tough game at home to a really good team in Michigan State. The next game, you should be beating up whoever the opponent is, especially considering that the opponent is significantly worse than you in a talent discrepancy and just of the season overall, right? Ohio State is going to make the NCAA tournament potentially. You're not thinking about Ohio State going to a Final Four team, making a Final Four run the same way that you generally do with Purdue on a year-in, year-out basis, especially over the last 4 or 5 years because of Matt Painter and how good they've been, right? This should have been a bludgeoning for Purdue, and they get smoked in the final 2 minutes of this one. And Ohio State beats them. The Boilermakers have now gone 5-6 in their last 11. 5-6 in their last 11, leading into the month of March, getting ready for a tournament where you have to win 6 in a row. They can't even win 6 in their last 11. How am I supposed to get behind a team like that? And it's not even like they're playing the biggest and the baddest competition. Again, Ohio State, solid quality team. They got 18 wins on the year, but that's not a team that is daunting. Yeah, Michigan State might be a little daunting, but that game was at home. They've lost to UCLA. They've lost to Indiana in basketball, not in football. That's a football school now, don't you know? They lost to Michigan and lost to Michigan pretty handedly. It's cool if you beat up on Maryland and your Oregons, with all due respect to those two programs. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Ohio State, I would factor that in. You're supposed to be beating Ohio State, and they just did not today. I'm all the way out on Purdue. All the way out. And when I start to fill out my bracket, we'll see who ends up matching across from who. When we start to get to the process, we're filling the bracket out, that team is, maybe they get out of round number 1. Maybe. But when you're looking at teams that are going to get upset early in the tournament, I got my eyes on the black and gold and the Boilermakers in Purdue. This is not the year for them. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One. We got 3 hours with you here nationwide. Again, you want to get in contact, you can tweet me at the Denton Day. You can ring us up on the phone, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. It is Combine Week in the NFL, or I should say it was Combine Week in the NFL. I personally find myself in the minority. I love the Combine. I love it. I had it on this entire week. The wife, the dog, they're constantly looking at me. They're like, are you just watching people run in very tight clothes? And I was like, yes, I am. Don't judge me. I love watching the Combine. Does it affect how I feel about certain guys? Not massively. I think this week was a good example of, yes, it can impact the way you feel about certain players. Sonny Styles, in particular, had a really great week. Really the edges and the tight ends from an athletic standpoint, those dudes were, I mean, you got a bunch of freaks at defensive end and at tight end. But the Combine itself, it does feel like the biggest name who did not participate, but regardless was still the biggest name, is Fernando Mendoza. Because we are still trying to figure out and piece him together. What is he going to be at the NFL level? What is it going to be like when the Raiders draft him? And Las Vegas is going to draft him. But I look at Fernando Mendoza as a guy that is much closer to Cam Ward than he was to a Jaden Daniels or a CJ Stroud. And what do I mean by that? Because it's not like Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud were these home run hits, knockout prospects. They ended up going to a team and they flipped bad teams into good teams very quickly. Mendoza is not that to me. I think he can be a good player in the NFL. I do not think he walks into Las Vegas and immediately takes them from the team that is drafting number 1 overall to a team that is going to be drafting in the 20s next year because they won 10 games. I just don't look at him as that kind of prospect. And that's the worst part about the Combine, I feel. Because it does feel like in the lead up to the NFL draft, and we're used to this, right? Guys make exaggerations. Guys make very bold claims in the space that I occupy. If you're watching on television, in the space that is on television, guys are going to say very bold things about certain prospects just to kind of get us through what is, generally speaking, the dog days of NFL coverage, right? Or the lead up to the dog days with what happens after the draft. But you need to get attention. Fernando Mendoza is a good football player. There is nobody that should be disputing that. And he can be very good at the NFL level. I heard the term not once, not twice, but multiple different times, generational, thrown around in relation to Fernando Mendoza. That is not accurate. First and foremost, I hate the term generational when it comes to describing prospects in the NFL draft. Hate it. Loathe it. It is awful. We have seen in the last 15 years, by my calculations, 3 generational guys, 3 of them. But it feels like that word is thrown out on a yearly basis. Everyone is trying to hype up who is going to eventually be the first quarterback taken, so they call him a generational prospect, particularly when we know that a quarterback, and they kind of did this a little bit with Cam Ward, not as much, but when you know that a quarterback is going to be taken number 1 overall for the entirety of the lead-up process, you just slap the term generational on them, and then you keep on moving about your business. That is not the case. For starters, it's unfair to Fernando Mendoza. But secondary, it's just not true. Again, there have been 3 in the last 15 years. Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams. Those have been the only 3 legitimate generational kind of quarterbacks that we have seen coming from college to the NFL. And a big reason for that is because we have known for years, plural, that those 3 guys were going to go number 1 overall. Andrew Luck could have came out in 2011. He would have been the surefire number 1 overall pick. He decided, nope, I'm going to stay at Stanford, comes out 2012, and he gets the nod over the then Heisman-winning Robert Griffin III. He's the number 1 overall pick. Trevor Lawrence, we knew was going to be the number 1 overall pick for like 3 years, bro. He could have sat out 2 years of college football, and he still would have been taken number 1 overall by whoever was lucky enough. We now know it was Jacksonville, but by whoever was lucky enough to be in that position. Everybody would have taken that dude. He checked every single box, handsome as hell, got the long hair, just won a championship. He's doing really great things at a program at a very high level. Everybody loved that dude. And then you could say the same thing for Caleb Williams. He comes in replacing Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, played really well, and you're thinking, all right, this guy was a 5-star. He came from the D.C. area, and if you know about high school recruiting, the DMV is a very nice area when it comes to recruiting guys to go from high school to college. So he's checking all those boxes. He loves Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley is like this quarterback whisperer. He got in Kyler number 1 overall. He got in Baker number 1 overall. So he was checking a lot of boxes, moves to USC, has that crazy Heisman year. And everyone's like, yes, this is what we thought he was going to be. And then he goes through that 3rd season, takes a little bit of a dip production-wise, doesn't matter because he checks all of these boxes. Mendoza is not that. He's still a really good player. He's still I find to be a very fascinating speaker. And I think that's why he kind of won some more people over this week. You know, we know what the Heisman speech was, and that was a fine speech, right? It was passionate. It was kind of what he was. But in speaking on like interviews and at the podium and going on shows where it has to be, not that the Heisman speech felt scripted, although it kind of was because that's what a speech is. It's a lot different, though, when you're sitting across from people, Florio and Sims, right? Isaac, like whoever it was that you're sitting across from as he's doing all of these media junkets. It's a lot different when you're getting asked questions and you're forced to kind of think quick on your feet, right? Generally speaking, for those that maybe think otherwise, you don't give whoever you're interviewing a list of questions, right? You just kind of ask them, especially when you're at that level. So I thought he played himself really, really well, honestly. I thought he was smart, he was funny, he could think on his feet. So I think the interview process won a lot of people over and kind of still lifted him up to say, hey, this is the surefire number 1 overall pick. We're not going to be trading out of this spot. Brady loves the guy. In fact, I actually do want to play something that Fernando Mendoza gave us at his, this was not with an interview itself, but this was just at his press availability. This is what Fernando Mendoza said about the potential of working with Tom Brady if he gets drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't admired Tom Brady? The guy has, more Super Bowl rings than anybody. So that opportunity would be fantastic. Tom Brady, I believe, is the greatest quarterback of all time by a wide margin, and to be able to have the opportunity to be mentored by him would mean so much, and especially to learn, and I'm all about learning. So from day one, I got to learn a lot, and it's going to be a long journey, and to potentially have a mentor like that would be pretty impressive and pretty meaningful.
It'd be sick. Honestly, I can't think of a better person to learn from, but I hope that the expectations for him are much more fair. You are not going to see guys like a Jaden Daniels and a CJ Stroud every single year. And you got to understand what you're working with there in Las Vegas. And they got a lot of cap room, so maybe in free agency they address a lot of the issues offensive line in particular. Another game breaker on wide receiver would be sensational, especially when you get a young quarterback. I do think the Clint Kubiak offense can allow Fernando Mendoza to have success relatively quickly at the NFL level. I just don't look at him as this massive franchise changer immediately. And again, to be fair, I don't know that that's a requirement. I think sometimes because we've seen two guys do it recently with Daniels and Stroud, that you think an early pick at quarterback should be starting day number one and it needs to immediately be awesome. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think that's realistic in the long term. It's going to be way about how do they build things up around him to make sure that he can be his best, to make sure that the transition is going to be smooth, or do they still have some questions? So we have heard that the conversations with Mendoza and with Las Vegas have been very good. He liked meeting with them. They seemingly liked meeting with him. But there are a lot of other options out there at quarterback. And just because a guy is really good in college does not mean that they always transition smoothly to the next level. J.J. McCarthy is a good example of that. We don't even know if he's going to be starting at quarterback this year for Minnesota. He's been there 2 years. They have no idea. It takes a little bit of time for certain guys to make that transition. If you're Vegas, you got a little bit of pressure coming in your direction as a front office from inside the organization with Max Crosby. Do you call Baltimore about a Lamar Jackson? To be honest, I would say absolutely. You have to make that particular phone call. Mendoza, to me, is not a guy where you throw your phone on airplane mode. You ever get signed up as a prank? My boys used to do this to me. Maybe this is more about them than it, and your friends are nicer to you. But my boys used to do this. They would always sign me up for political ads. It's a prank. We're going to give your number to a political caller, and they're just going to call you nonstop and nonstop and nonstop to eventually, I got to throw my phone on airplane mode. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not taking any calls. I don't want any conversation. Mendoza is not that kind of prospect to me. I think you can still have conversations with some other players in the league. Baltimore is obviously, if you can get Lamar Jackson, you got to make that phone call. Kyler Murray seemingly is going to be released. I'm not going to say that that's 100% set in stone, but we are getting reports out of Indianapolis today that Kyler Murray is likely going to be released very soon, which means he would be on the open market. You got to have that conversation with yourself internally. Would we prefer Kyler Murray, who you kind of know what he is as a quarterback, or do we want Fernando Mendoza? For me personally, I'm still taking Fernando Mendoza versus Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is, look, man, he's too short. He just is. He can't see over his offensive line. Fernando Mendoza can. I think Mendoza can make some big-time throws, play a little bit better on schedule. I'm not going to take Kyler Murray over Fernando Mendoza, but internally you have to have that conversation. Kirk Cousins is going to be in the same standpoint. And honestly, if Kirk Cousins wants to come play on a cheap, I'd get both of them. I'd get Kirk Cousins in here. Him and Fernando Mendoza are basically clones of one another from a personality standpoint and a little bit from the style of play that they have. I mean, Mendoza runs a little bit more than Kirk Cousins did, but Kirk Cousins had that sneaky athleticism, man. I would get him in here and say, hey, let's see what we can do. Maybe he can kind of teach Fernando Mendoza in season number 1, and then Mendoza takes over, a la how Patrick Mahomes did with Alex Smith. I don't think just because you're picked number 1 overall that you have to start immediately. If you think, hey, he could use a little bit of time learning from somebody that's really smart and that's going to be the betterment for the long term for us as an organization and for him career-wise, I think you pulled that trigger. I need to know your thoughts, though. 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. How do you feel about Fernando Mendoza as a prospect as we are now just weeks away from the NFL draft? We're going to get Emory Hunt's thoughts on Fernando Mendoza and all of the other prospects that stole the show this week in Indianapolis. He's going to join us next right here on Westwood One. You're listening to Denton Day. Don't go anywhere.
The NFL Combine is underway. GMs are meeting, and trade season has officially sparked. We're breaking down the moves that could reshape the league and your team. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports, sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. We're going to go out to the phone lines here momentarily. In 15 minutes, we're going to break down Jeremiah Love and how he kind of compares to running backs of years prior, similar to what we just did with Fernando Mendoza. But in order to get us to that point, to help us talk about some of the things that we saw this week in Indianapolis, My guy Emory Hunt's good enough to join us here, and he is with us now on Westwood One Sports. You've seen his work on CBS Sports HQ. You can give him a follow on Twitter at FBall Game Plan. Emory, my man, I appreciate you making some time for us on a Sunday. I know this is your wheelhouse, so we had to get you on here. How'd you feel about the Combine? Just kind of general thoughts. Anything in particular stand out to you now that it's in the rearview mirror?
They switched up the format this year, which kind of made things a little awkward because you kind of come into these events knowing what to expect, knowing how things operate, knowing where to go. And as soon as you walk in, it was like, wow, they rearranged the room, kind of cut it in half, and then they adjusted the time slot. I felt like prior years it was going from 8 a.m. to about 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. And this time it was more so. One day it was 8, one day it was 9, but they always ended at noon, and it just felt like a lot of it was different. On top of the fact that I didn't get a chance to get in until Wednesday because I was snowed in Monday and Tuesday here in New York City area.
Man, so you really had to fight through the weather. Did they give you a reason as to why they made some of the changes schedule-wise that they did this year?
No, there was just no reason, and I saw there was conversation this morning about no one's here for offensive line. Well, that used to be the case for defensive backs because whoever's the last group to go, media is usually out by Friday, and then they happen to work out on the weekend because there was one point in time where we couldn't get into the workouts. And so now that they slid everything to the weekend, it makes it even more complicated for media outlets to stay the entire 7 days because they used to work out while some groups were going on during the week, and they moved everything to a primetime setting, which sort of altered how everything was operated.
It's rare, right? You don't generally see the NFL mess up these kind of things, so it feels like a very rare L when it comes to the presentation of their product. In terms of the workouts themselves, who jumped off the field to you when you got to kind of see them up close and personal?
Obviously, it was Sonny Styles, and being one of many guys that, and this is probably the better answer. When I looked at, I used to always wonder as a kid and as a teen watching the sport and playing the sport, and you're looking at, let's say guys like Barry Sanders, right? And you're thinking, man, I wonder if what would Red Grange think of a guy like Barry Sanders if he saw him today and how he just looks insane, like a video game. And I fast forward to now, and I'm find myself in amazement. Like, there's no way I played the same sport where everybody's running 4.3 and jumping 40 inches on the vertical. And it's like, my goodness, where we now are considering 4.5 to be slow. So when you look at the Sonny Styles and the Taylor Greens and every wide receiver and running back running 4.3s, it blows my mind to think how quickly in the last 20 years people have legitimately gotten bigger, faster, stronger. Now, a lot of that is, better nutrition. People are training more for these events, and it's just wild to see still how many of these athletes are doing stuff that we've never seen before.
I'm glad you bring up Sonny Styles, right? Because in watching him at Ohio State, I could see this guy's good. He's going to be a good NFL player. I didn't know he was an alien because what he showed this week was he was an alien. Where does he play at the NFL level?
Defense. Plays defense. You know what I'm saying? So when you have a guy that can do all of those things, you just want him out there. And what's interesting in asking about Sonny Styles, if you told me he played another position, I wouldn't believe you because he doesn't show it out there when he's playing linebacker. He looks like how a linebacker's supposed to play. He's thumping downhill. He's chasing sideline to sideline. He's making open field tackles. And you like that about him. But then he can also get out there and match up one-on-one versus some of your receivers. Definitely can match up one-on-one versus your tight end and can carry backs down the seam, down the sideline. So in terms of value, in terms of doing more than with less or doing more than what your job is required, sounds to me that's the type of talent you take high in the draft because he can do so many different things.
How do you think he compares to a guy like an Isaiah Simmons, who we saw in a very similar spot, albeit not the exact same, but how does they compare on the field?
It's funny because I use this analogy. Deion Buchanan was the prototype.
Yeah.
And then we got the updated version with Isaiah Simmons. And now I feel like we've reached the final form of this hybrid new age linebacker in Sonny Styles. Because, Deion Buchanan had the athleticism and the versatility to play both, but he didn't have the fluidity that we saw from an Isaiah Simmons, who didn't have the particularly, run-stuffing ability, but he was able to run around and he could even drop back and play some safety if need be or cover. But we didn't see the downhill play from him. Well, we see all of the above from Sonny Styles. So I think that's the difference. He can play traditional linebacker. He can cover, in nickel packages. He can blitz off the edge like a pass rusher. So I think he is the final form of this transformation of that position that we saw started with Deion Buchanan.
Talking with Emory Hunt here on Westwood One Sports. Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. When you look at the edge position, is Reuben Bain's arm length as big of a deal as it's being made out to be?
To me, not at all. And I see this analogy that I've used for a decade is now starting to make its rounds. And, I fear that it's going to get Columbus by folks. And people forget who said this, original thing. I always use the Mike Tyson analogy. Mike Tyson was 5'10" and was outreached by everybody he fought. It did not matter because he got inside you quickly and got his hands on you first. You have long arms. It means nothing if you can't get those long arms on me first. So whoever wins the hands first battle wins the rep. Also, we hear this, saying, this football saying since 1869, since it started. It's like, hey, low man wins. Now you get a low man, it's like, wow, you got to be this tall, you got to be long. Like, I thought y'all said low man wins. You know what I'm saying? Every time we watch Bain, he's winning with leverage. He's winning with power. The one thing Bain is an expert at is playing at his size with his arm length. So what you're watching is a guy that's able to supersede his measurables, because if it was an issue, he wouldn't be as successful as he's been. And on the last thing that I say about this is, who do you think he's playing against? These are the dudes that you're going to play in the NFL. Like, where do you think they come from? So that's the part I just don't understand. Like, if his size was an issue, it would show up on film. But every time we watch film, all we see is Bain in the backfield versus the run, Bain in the backfield versus the pass. So I say no.
Would you take him first edge off the board, or is there somebody else that you feel like edges him out a little bit?
I would take him because what I like about him is he has a great sense of timing of when and where to make the big play. And we see this. Just imagine you sitting there watching a game, you say to yourself, man, so-and-so this team needs a big play. Then boom, he's the one that makes the play. And when you have that sense of timing at any position, that's the kind of guy you want, because that's the kind of guy that's able to sense that, lock in, and make that play. So I know there's taller edge rushers, more athletic edge rushers, toolsier edge rushers, but guys that make plays. When it's week 9, do you care that you took Bain, second overall when he's out there rookie? Yeah, he's got 3 sacks on the day, but we could have got better positional value if we would have traded. No, nobody cares. They only care about that now. You know what I'm saying? Get guys that play football that make plays.
That's a great point. No one's making it. You're only making that those kind of comparisons, those comments, if it didn't work out. You're not making it if it does work out. Emory Hunt is with us here on Westwood One Sports Radio. Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. You played the position, so I've been very, very excited. Maybe I should have led with this. I love watching Jeremiah Love. I loved him at Notre Dame. I think now that he's making the step to the next level, you're seeing the intangibles, and he is he looks like a can't-miss prospect. What did you notice the most when you watch film on him from his time at Notre Dame?
The same thing. I just talked about Bain. Timing. When to make the big play. It always seems to come at the right time. And he's super explosive, man. And I'm glad you said you just love watching him, because when you see backs that you just love watching, you get that feeling of this is something special. Like, it gets you out your seat. It gets you excited. That's how I felt when I saw Jahmyr Gibbs play. You feel like every carry has a chance to go the distance. And those are the type of backs you take high in the draft. The Saquon Barkley, the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Bijan Robinson, those guys that could ring that cash register up from anywhere on the field. And, when you have that, it changes how you play defense. And so having a game breaker, a true game breaker like that on the field, now that really opens up your passing game because teams are worried about being a half step out of place. Because if they are, it's over. He's going to hit that hole and he's gone. And now you're able to have a little bit more room to throw the football. Receivers have a little bit room to operate. So I just saw a player, a special talent. I want to see him be a little bit more judicious as a pro in terms of when and where to take on contact. Like there's no 19-year-olds in the NFL, so you can't run through everybody, and guys are not going to be afraid to tackle you. So that's where I feel like he has a little bit more room to get better.
So I'm in D.C., Emory, and obviously Commanders Twitter kind of takes up a lot of my time. Do you feel like he fits better in Washington or in Kansas City? It feels like those are the two fan bases that have their eyes on him the most.
Anyone works. And the reason why I say Washington is that anytime you pair an explosive back with a mobile quarterback, great things happen. You look at Vince Young with CJ2K. You look at RG3 with insert back there. Lamar Jackson with insert back there. You saw what happened when he got Derrick Henry, record-breaking. Jalen Hurts, what he did for Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, and also Saquon Barkley. So anytime Michael Vick with Warwick Dunn had his best yards per carry and his best seasons with Michael Vick. So him in Washington would be dynamic. Him anywhere else would be very good as well. So I would say that now is where you expect him to go.
So you had said earlier in our conversation, it's crazy how fast some of these guys are running. Like 4.3s, 4.4s. You have to have a 4.4 or you're slow. Does that mean Carnell Tate is slow at what did he run, a 4.53?
Absolutely not, man. He plays faster than that. Absolutely not. That's just insane.
Like I was stunned by, because I think you're right. I think when you watch him play, I mean, that guy has burners on. So that doesn't shy you away. If you love Carnell Tate, you're still taking Carnell Tate pretty high just because you're not shying away from him just because he ran a 4.52.
Absolutely not. I'm taking him.
Is he the best wide receiver in this year's class?
There's I graded about 4 different positions. So, he's my number one Z. You look at Denzel Boston is my number one big inside receiver. My number one slot receiver is Mekhi Lemon, and my number one X is Jordan Tyson. So he's one of 4 guys that I have at the top of their respective position, because you can't just grade Randy Moss next to Wes Welker because they're playing different positions, although they both are wide receivers.
Right. That's a fascinating way of doing it. See, this is why we got to have you, why I love talking to you, because you take the approach that I feel like most guys maybe miss out on when it comes to grading and looking at these guys. A final question for you, my friend. I really appreciate your time on a Sunday here. Mendoza is obviously quarterback 1, right? He's going to go to number 1 overall more likely than not to the Las Vegas Raiders. Who is QB2 in this year's draft?
I have Taylor Green as QB2. He's been my QB2 since the summer. I said he was the number 1 quarterback in the SEC. That proved to be true. 6'6", 230 reminds me so much of Randall Cunningham, Colin Kaepernick, Vince Young. I think someone's going to get themselves a true gem on day 2.
He does feel like a diamond in a rough. He had some really, really impressive performances this year. Emory, you're the man. I appreciate you doing this as always, my friend. Hope to do it again soon before we get to the draft.
Appreciate you, Denton. Always a pleasure.
That is Emory Hunt. You can find him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. You've seen his work on CBS Sports HQ. Taylor Green set records. One of the fastest guys that we've seen at the quarterback position in a long, long time. And we've seen some good ones as of late, right? Lamar was obviously fast. Jane Daniels fast. Jalen Hurts fast. And Taylor Green is right up there with those guys. The quarterback 2 conversation has always fascinated me in the lead up to this, because I don't think there's a clear-cut answer. If I had 10 different guys who were all there at the Combine, who have all had eyes on the Senior Bowl, who were all locked in and have watched film of college football this year, you're likely going to get a few different answers. Not 10 different answers. I'm not going to be that crazy. But if I get 10 people in a room, you're probably going to get like 4 or 5 different answers. You're going to get a Taylor Green. You're going to get a Ty Simpson. I personally really like Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. I just look at what happened this year for LSU and thought, man, that offensive line stunk. Man, the wide receivers weren't nearly what LSU was accustomed to getting at the wide receiver position. this year, and then he gets hurt, and you have all these different variables that factored into him not playing well. Maybe you get someone who's going to say Carson Beck. I would push back on that one. That's probably the only one that I would say, hey, I don't know that guy's quarterback too, but that is going to be really, really fascinating because I often feel like outside of the can't miss dudes, right? Cam Ward last year, Fernando Mendoza this year, Caleb, Jaden, Drake May the year before that, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud the year prior to that. When you get down into the depths of the quarterback position, it really is hey, this particular guy loves this particular guy. It's so different. It's so nuanced when it comes to talking to teams and talking to the guys that are making this decision. It fascinates me. It's one of my favorite things to watch in the lead up to the NFL draft. We talked about Jeremiah Love. I'm going to tell you why this guy's the best prospect that we've seen in a long, long time, and we'll do it next. It's Westwood One Sports. Dent Day sitting in for Josh Graham. Don't go anywhere.
There's some big names on the trade block. Jalen Waddle, Max Crosby, A.J. Brown. Where are they going, and how will the moves impact your team? We'll tell you as it happens. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. If this is your first time listening, you can call me D-Day. I'm sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday here. You can watch us on YouTube. Be sure if you're hearing my voice and you even remotely like me, or if you hate me, go subscribe. We'll take a couple of hate subscribers as much as we like guys that actually want to come watch our content. Westwood One Sports Night, we're trying to grow this thing from the ground up, so go over, find us on YouTube, subscribe to that. You can contact me directly on Twitter at @TheDentonDay. We'll also open up phones in about 30 minutes' time at 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. I want your best edge in the 2026 draft class. A couple different directions you can go. We'll start taking your calls in about 30 minutes. We just had a really good conversation with Emory Hunt. I always love picking his brain in the lead up to the NFL draft because he watches a ton of football. And I asked him about Jeremiah Love. What do you think about Jeremiah Love? He said what I expected him to say. Jeremiah Love is pretty good. And if you've watched any college football, if you've watched Jeremiah Love in any capacity, it's not very difficult to realize why everybody is as excited about him as we are. Did he play awesome in every single game? No. I can hear Miami fans typing away saying, no, he didn't play good against us. And you guys are correct. He did not. That was one of the one bad games that Jeremiah Love had, and obviously that's one of the reasons why Miami was able to take advantage and to beat Notre Dame, which is why they made it to the college football playoff. I'm sure you've heard about that. But in watching Jeremiah Love, I wondered, all right, I'm looking at him on the screen, and I think this guy's awesome. I think he's one of the best running back prospects that we have seen in years. But we also said that last year about Ashton Jeanty. And I just did this whole song and dance at the beginning of the show, hating the label generational. I don't like when people call quarterbacks generational. I really don't like it when people call running backs generational, because if there's only a few quarterbacks that meet that mold, I feel like there's even fewer running backs that meet that mold just because of the nature of what the position is, the longevity of what the position is in the NFL. But I was curious, how do statistically Jeremiah Love and Ashton Jeanty stack up against one another? So I went and did some digging over the weekend. It was beautiful in the D.C. area, so I made sure to get outside. I don't take notes outside very often, but I did a little bit of that this weekend because it was so nice, but I also had some things that I had to do. Sometimes I hyper-focus on things, and this was one of them. So I wanted to see, what do the numbers say about the comparison of Jeremiah Love in Notre Dame and Ashton Jeanty in that 2024 season at Boise State. If you look at just from a total perspective, Jeanty clears him by a mile, right? I mean, this guy was knocking on the door of one of the all-time records in terms of rushing yards that Barry Sanders set. He set decades ago, right? So being able to come up with that is going to be really, really difficult. The touchdown number that Ashton Jeanty put up was really, really insane. 29 touchdowns to Jeremiah Love's 18. So if you look at the totals, right, Jeanty doubles him in yards, and he has 11 more touchdowns. Jeremiah Love at 1,372 yards, so not quite doubling, 1,372 yards, 18 touchdowns compared to Jeanty's 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns. So I said, all right, let me dive a little bit deeper in here. Let me look at the averages. Because I know Ashton Genty was the only thing that that Boise State had on offense in 2024. He was it. If he was not playing well, they were not playing well. Thankfully for them, he played well very frequently. Now, when you get to the averages, though, this is where this conversation becomes way more intriguing. Because at just the totals, it's a massive difference. But Ashton Genty had nearly 400 carries in 2024, 374 carries to get him to 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns. Jeremiah Love had 199 carries and got 1,300, almost 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns. The average yard per carry for Jeremiah Love was 6.9 yards per carry. Nice, right? That's a good number. Ashton Genty had 7 yards a carry. With significantly more carries, yes, you would think, all right, mathematically here, I'm not like a math guy, but my dad's a math guy, so some of those genes pass down. Mathematically, eventually with more carries, that number probably comes down at least a little bit. I'm not saying a lot of it, but at least a little bit. So maybe if Jeremiah Love had a similar amount of carries to that of Ashton Genty, he's only averaging like 6.5 yards a carry, 6.7 yards a carry, only 6.7 yards a carry. Dudes on Sunday would literally sell their soul to have a running back that could do that at the NFL level, right? So the average in that is the same. Then I look at the touchdowns and do the discrepancy, right? 29 touchdowns on 375 carries. That means Ashton Genty scored basically every 13 times he carried the football in the run game, right? So every 13 carries, he was going to find himself into the end zone. If you take the Jeremiah Love touchdown numbers at 18 and then divide that by 199 carries, Jeremiah Love was scoring every 11 times he touched the football. He would have had 33 touchdowns, 4 more than Ashton Genty, if he had the magnitude of carries that he got. So just numbers-wise, based off of averages, these two guys are very, very close to one another, and that's when you start to factor in the competition, right? And that's kind of what separates, I feel like, a Jeremiah Love and why I've decided to just crown him. I'm saying this is the best running back prospect that we've seen since the Saquon Barkley, because he has everything, right? He's right up there. If you want to say Bijan Robinson, I'm not going to fight you too much there. I think Bijan's awesome. Jahmyr Gibbs, awesome. Like, he's right in that category. And that's not to say that Ashton Genty with a good, competent offensive line, because Lord knows they did not have one of those in Las Vegas this year. If he gets a good, competent offensive line, maybe Mendoza pans out and becomes really awesome. There might end up being something there for him at the NFL level. But with Jeremiah Love, because of the explosiveness and what Emory mentioned that really stands out when I watch him, and I'm a layman, right? I'm not like this super film guru guy. I'm never going to sit up here and pretend that I am. But just in watching the way that Jeremiah Love attacks and the patience that he has, you can't teach that sort of stuff. The patience. That's just you either have that gene or you don't have that gene. It's kind of an X factor, if you will, because there are so many running backs that are super talented at the NFL level, but for whatever the reason is, they just can't slow down mentally when the play is unfolding. They can't allow the play and the design to do what it needs to do and play their role in that in a way that Jeremiah Love can. And that's sometimes pausing to allow not just the offensive linemen in front of you to do what they need to do on counters, on sweeps, on whatever, right? But that's also allowing the defense to kind of overplay their hand a little bit. And in watching Love, that I feel like is what he did better than anybody. On top of the jets and the burners and the vision and all these things, the amount of times that he would be patient enough to a point where the defense, they think he's going one way, and they have committed to him going one way, and then he plants that foot in the ground, and he's going the opposite way. And not only is he going the opposite way, he's going the opposite way for about 50 or 60. Or in one instance against Ball Scott, like 94 yards, right? There's very few guys that I think have the capability just over the course of years, not in this year's class, over the course of years at the college level to be able to do that, and to be able to do that against high-level competition on a week in, week-out basis. And I do feel like that has to matter. I'm a college nerd the way that most of you, or some of you are. Maybe not everybody, but some of you are. You've heard me, hopefully, on SiriusXM following college football Saturdays for the last 3 years doing the college football overtime show. I be watching as much college football as I can, but I'm smart enough to know, and while I like college football, honestly, a little bit more than I like the NFL, it's a different game at the NFL level. And I feel like what he has translates to the NFL level, to where if you pair him with a Jaden Daniels, or if you pair him with a Patrick Mahomes and an offensive mind in Andy Reid in Kansas City, or in hopefully what David Blau ends up being in Washington, but an offensive mind and an offensive system that really values running the football and is committed to running the football. So maybe less Kansas City, if we're being honest, because they just have not been committed to running the football since they realized that their quarterback is the equivalent of Michael Jordan in the NFL. But if you land him in a position with a coaching staff that understands and is committed to running the football, all hell is going to break loose, because he is going to dominate at this level. He is going to quickly ascend like we saw Bijan Robinson do, like we saw Jahmyr Gibbs do, and I don't think it's going to take multiple years. I think it's going to take 1 year. I think it's going to take maybe even less than that. I think it's going to take 8 games. You're going to know, we are going to know by week number 8 what Jeremiah Love is and just how good he is going to end up being at the NFL level. And as far as my money's concerned, that is going to be really, really good. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham. We open up phone lines in 15 minutes time. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you who the dark horse is in this upcoming NFL draft. You don't want to miss it. Don't go anywhere.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Is Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday on Westwood One Sports? You can connect with us via phone, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. We're opening phone lines up in 15 minutes here on the show. The question, who's the best edge in the NFL draft? There's a lot of good ones out there. I want you to ride for somebody. 310-840-4910. Your calls in 15 minutes. If you can't wait 15 minutes, you can tweet me at the Denton Day who your best edge is. And the reason I bring this up is because I look at this edge group and I look at Ruben Bain and I say this dude is the biggest wild card in the NFL draft this year. Because he could be awesome, or all of the things that are said about him negatively, the arm length, kind of not knowing where he's going to play, all of that could be true. So he was at the Combine this week. He worked out. I was really happy with the amount of edge guys that were there and willing to work out in some capacity or another. Maybe not necessarily all about the 40 times. I don't really care about 40 times all that much for edge guys. Like, it's cool for certain guys, but I want to see measurables, right? I want to see, what is this guy? What does he look like? How does he measure up with some of the guys that are in his class? And Ruben Bain was there to get measured, right? So I think he's going to save a lot of the workout stuff for his actual pro day, but he was there to get measured, and it was nice to see him and kind of size him up against some of these other dudes. I think the winners of the weekend, David Bailey measured out the way that you would like an NFL edge to measure out if you're building one in a lab. Arvell Reese was in a very similar spot, though we still don't really know what he is going to play. But Bain is the guy that these conversations have been ramping up since the college football playoff. He was the presumed first edge off of the board prior to the college football season starting this year. If you go back and look at mock drafts that are way too early, but if you go back and look at mock drafts that were done in the summer of 2025, Ruben Bain was edge number one. It was him, or it was T.J. Parker at Clemson, right? Not a lot of people knew about Arvell Reese yet, and certainly no one really knew about David Bailey. He was just this guy that was transferring from Stanford, Texas Tech. We knew that the offensive or the defensive line had a lot of money into it, but you didn't know what he was going to be. So all of the attention was at Ruben Bain. And the fact that he went through the entire season and he was able to play at a high enough level to keep it that way, because that's not always the case. But he played at a high enough level to keep it that way, but really saved his best football for the end of the season in the playoff when everybody is watching that really helped his case. That really helped his case to solidifying him as one of the top edge guys, but it also started the conversations. What is he actually going to play? Is edge the position that he is actually going to play? Because he's such a powerful and a strong dude, but you look at him on the field, and it's apparent that the arm length is not what you see of a traditional edge defender. And we just had Emory on, and Emory's awesome, right? And he kind of mentioned it's this Mike Tyson parallel, right? And I'm going to give him credit. He said people don't give him credit. He was the guest on the show, so I'm going to give him some credit. He made the parallel to that of Mike Tyson, where Mike Tyson did not have the longest arms, but he was so good elsewhere that he was able to make up for the fact that he did not have the longest arms. And I think that comparison is great. The execution is what I don't know about. You don't have long arms. Cool. What is that going to look like when you're going up against guys in the NFL that do have long arms? Will you be good enough at the NFL level when everybody is, 0.001 percentile of an athlete, specifically at the tackle position? Maybe they line him up on the left side of the defense, so he's going up against the right tackles. But if you're drafting a guy in the top 5, top 10, you're saying, hey, we're going to play you everywhere on the edge spots. You're going to go up against right tackles. You're going to go up against left tackles. We're going to trust you at times to go up against guys that are traditionally all pros, right? Think of your Trent Williams, Lane Johnsons, your Laramie Tunsil's, like guys that have put years and years and years at this level to being known for one thing, and that's stopping you from getting to the quarterback. We're going to sometimes put you over there because you are our guy. You are supposed to be this game wrecker, and I do wonder if you will be able to do that against guys at this particular level. So I was watching the combine, and Daniel Jeremiah said something really interesting about Ruben Bain and the way that he views Ruben Bain, or more so the way that he has heard of other people viewing Ruben Bain. So this is Daniel Jeremiah, what he has heard from guys in the NFL and how it relates to the arm length of Ruben Bain.
I have my thoughts on it as a scout, and I think every measurement matters, but I wanted to reach out to some defensive coordinators and see what they thought and how they would explain it. So I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. What's the biggest issue with length? A lack of length. He said generally it's finishing. Not as good at extending and separating off blocks, not as good extending to get to the elbow or even wrapping around the quarterback. So then the follow-up question is, well, how would you overcome that, in your opinion, if you don't have length? Like Bain. He said, I said leverage. He goes, for sure, explosion, using leverage to your advantage, having the ability to close that ground with your feet because you can't do it with your length.
So people in the NFL might be worried about the finishing due to the smaller arms. But I did like the back half of that clip because it said, hey, there is an ability, or there is room, rather, for him to still be really good, right? Like, it's not just a surefire thing that because the arms are short that you have to write him off completely as a prospect. If he's really good in other things and has other intangibles, things that can kind of make up for it, then it ends up being okay, right? I feel like I can make this. I have glasses. Eyes, not very good. It's been said that if you have really poor senses in one particular area, they might be heightened in other areas. Now, my eyes aren't that bad. But I've heard blind folks say this, right? Like, hey, I can't see, but my sense of smell heightened. My sense of hearing heightened, right? This is a known scientific thing. Maybe for Ruben Bain, it's the same thing. Hey, my arms aren't the longest, but my power, my quickness, my savviness, if you will, the finesse, although he's less of a finesse guy, just more of a, hey, I'm going to run through your face kind of a guy. But all these other things are heightened because they make up for the fact that my arms are not the longest thing in the world. But this does bother me, and I have a little bit of concern for this particular reason. Last year we had this conversation on the opposite side of the football with Will Campbell, who goes number 4 to New England. He was one of the best guys coming out of the draft at LSU, and he was the surefire, look, this dude's going to be awesome. But, man, his arms are really short. And then you go through the NFL season, and I don't think he had a bad season by any stretch of the imagination, but you saw, hey, the arm length is a little bit of a problem here. Hey, like he's not winning at the left tackle position the way that we would want him to win at the left tackle position, and that was really magnified in the Super Bowl. Everybody's watching, and Will Campbell, God love him, he is a turntable. Just getting run through, snap after snap, rep after rep. And then you start to put together, this is kind of happening a little bit in the NFC Championship game against Denver. Hey, this is kind of happening a little bit in the game against Houston as well. And, hey, this was kind of happening a little bit against Los Angeles as well. So you just stack together this entire playoff performance, this entire 4-game stretch, which should be awesome because you're playing in the Super Bowl and you have an opportunity to win a championship. But the left tackle, his arms are not long enough, presumably, to play the position at a super, super high level. Now that's not like me writing Will Campbell off, but just in a 1-year sample size, it is really, really difficult to play that position at a high level with short arms. Here's the kicker, though. Will Campbell's arms were just shy of 33 inches. So he's having these issues, basically being called a T-Rex. Yet his arms are a full 2 inches longer than that of what Ruben Bain was measured at this week at the Combine. And please miss me with any conversation of he was measured officially at this, but other teams measured him at that. No, they didn't. That is an agent trying to get ahead of the story. We saw that with Carnell Tate in his 40 time, right? This whole big thing is taken over Twitter today because Carnell Tate at Ohio State ran a 4.52 that was then labeled a 4.53 in the 40, and then Adam Schefter takes to Twitter and says, well, actually, somebody hand-timed him at 4.45, 4.47. You know why we don't use hand timing? Because it's not accurate. That's why we don't use hand timing. So miss me with any of this. Well, someone behind closed doors measured his arms at a different length. I am not buying in to that propaganda. He was measured at 30 and 7/8. His arms are 30 and 7/8. The Combine people measure this officially because they don't screw it up. That's the reason. So, with that said, coming down from my high horse, coming down from my pedestal here a little bit. Will Campbell was criticized for having these short arms, and his arms are 2 inches longer than that of Ruben Bain. That worries me a little bit. Sports Illustrated they compiled a list of information. This was last year, right? So this was going into the 2025 NFL draft. The average arm length of an NFL left tackle is 35 inches. And there's some guys that are in that elite percentile where their arms might be 35 inches, and there might even be some just like athletic genetic freaks who have an arm length of 36 inches. Like, I mean, that is a gargantuan reach that you would be able to have if you have a 36-inch arm, right? Like that is insane. I mean, look, man, 4 inches, I've been told, big. It's a lot, big number. So it's a 4-inch difference. That's a pretty big difference. When you're getting to like 5 or 6, though, man, like that's like a bully at a schoolyard, right? That's when the fifth grader comes to pick on the kindergartner when you're playing recess because for whatever reason everybody's having recess at the same time. Maybe senior to a freshman, right? Like that is just a monumental difference in terms of the ability of reach. And if you're playing this position at the NFL level and you got years in this game, odds are you have built up the strength necessary to say, hey, the rookie is not going to come manhandle the veteran immediately, right? So that worries me a little bit with Ruben Bain. I love him as a player. I watch him in the college football playoff and say, man, every time this team needs a play, this team being Miami, every time Miami needs a big-time play, Ruben Bain is there to make a big-time play. He had sacks galore. He had blocked field goals, which, I mean, you want to talk about arm length being really important. You got to be able to use the arms correctly if you're blocking a field goal, right? So he comes and he makes big plays on a routine basis at Miami, but we've done this before where, hey, this guy in college was awesome, and then for whatever reason, usually because of intangibles, he makes the jump to the NFL level, and it is less awesome. And now we compare this with how everybody else measured up, right? David Bailey has 33 and 3/4 inch arms. This is why David Bailey, by the way, is my favorite edge. And we're going to have this conversation with you in 5 minutes here. So get up on the phone lines, 310-840-4910. Who's your favorite edge in the class? I love David Bailey at Texas Tech. I think he's been awesome. Arvell Reese, who has been the guy that has occupied the first edge spot off of the board for the past couple of weeks in the mock draft space across the NFL, his arms are about 32.5 inches. So he has about an inch and a half more of reach compared to that of Ruben Bain. And then you get maybe the dark horse in this whole conversation. Keldrick Falk out of Auburn has 34 and 3/8 inch arms. 34 and 3/8 inch arms. Now, he at Auburn was a little bit more of a run stopper than he was a get after the passer kind of a guy. But you got to think, coached up with the right coaching staff, maybe with the right defense, he can transition into a guy that can get after the quarterback at a really high level. But it feels like these guys are the top 4 guys in the edge class this year. So I want your phone calls at 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910 as to who you think the best edge is going to be. But that just in lies the problem there, right? Is that Bain is at a massive discrepancy compared to those guys when it comes to the ability of reach, the ability to win immediately off of the line of scrimmage, because you could just smack the guy, the offensive tackle, right or left, whatever side you're on, maybe you're matched up with a guard or a tight end, of just being able to smack that guy off of the line and get to your spot quicker than anybody. So he's going to really have to kind of fall is not the right word, but to really emphasize the speed and the strength and do that every single play if he's going to be a super successful player in this league, or he's going to have to put on some weight and play defensive tackle. And by the way, I don't consider that to be a knock. I know edge guys get paid more than defensive tackles, and generally speaking, an edge guy is looked at as more important than a defensive tackle. If you're a badass defensive tackle, you're going to make a lot of good money in the NFL. In fact, the best defensive player that we have seen in this generation was Aaron Donald, who played that position, right? If you are just a badass in the middle of the pile, you're going to be really, really helpful to a defense. Maybe you can move him around in different spots in the NFL. That is going to be kind of like, hey, it is in the eye of the coaches. What do they see? What do they think he can do? I'm sure he wants to play edge, but he, to me, is just a big wild card because of the reach thing, or the lack thereof of the reach. But I want your thoughts on the edge position as a whole. 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. Who's your favorite edge in this year's draft class? We'll take some of your calls when we get back. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One. Don't go anywhere.
How long will the Steelers wait for a decision from Aaron Rodgers? Or could Mike McCarthy and company be in the market for a QB like Malik Willis in free agency? Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
You're listening to Denton Day on Westwood One Sports, sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. We're opening up the phone lines, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. Who is the best edge rusher in this year's draft class? You get one selection. Who would you take? Ruben Bain, Arvell Reese, David Bailey, Keldrick Falk, or maybe you want to go someone outside of those four. We are open to that at 310-840-4910. You can also tweet me if the phones aren't your thing at The Denton Day. We're live on Twitter and YouTube. You can see me on Twitter at The Denton Day. For the YouTube, you got to subscribe to the Westwood One Sports Night YouTube page. We're growing this thing from the ground up. Last Monday, we saw Linnell Willingham make pancakes live on air. We're going to get him to make something else tomorrow night for our Meal Monday episode of the show. So you got to subscribe so you can see that live as it's going on in real time. So just search Westwood One Sports Night on YouTube. So we're taking your calls right now for the best edge class, or best edge in this year's class in the 2026 NFL Draft. I just got done saying that Ruben Bain is a guy that I'm a little curious about. I think there's a lot of intangibles there for Ruben Bain that are very good. He has great strength. He has great speed. But the arm length at the NFL level is something that does worry me a little bit. Who would you take if you get one selection? 310-840-4910. We will start with Mitch in New Jersey. Mitch, who are you taking at edge if you have one selection?
Good evening, Dad. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I got one guy, I believe. Yeah, anytime. I believe the guy from Oregon Ducks, Mateo, DJ's brother, Uingalele. I believe he plays edge number 10.
Yeah.
That's a great name. I'm waiting for that quarterback from Cal to come out 2 years. Saga Pulitelli, great name. But I think there's a lot of good a lot of good defensive linemen, excuse me, they're going to be out this year's draft. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mitch, as always. I think that's a deep pull with going to Uiagalelei out of Oregon. I did not anticipate that we would get that. I don't think it's a bad selection by any stretch of the imagination, but there are a lot of guys that I would take potentially over him. Here's another guy that I am very, very intrigued with at this particular position. R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma is in a very similar spot to Ruben Bain, albeit without the hype that Ruben Bain gets, because R. Mason Thomas was dominant this year at times for Oklahoma. He was a really, really good player that could really, really take advantage of the opposing team's offense. And you made a big-time difference on a really good defense for the Oklahoma Sooners. And that's something to me that really stands out when watching. So he's a guy that's deeper down the draft board that I would be very, very intrigued with drafting if I was in a position to do so. So we'll take some more of your calls, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One Sports. You can tweet me as well at the Denton Day. You can watch us as well on our YouTube and on our Twitter stream. So you can see this beautiful face of mine that clearly needs a little bit more light on it and maybe a few more push-ups. I'm on a weight loss journey, so I gotta do some more push-ups. Before we continue with the combine stuff, I'm going to tell you something that happened to me today, Will, that you are going to laugh at. And I think it's a really good question in terms of when are people allowed to ticket you and when are they not allowed to ticket you. Because I got a ticket today, a parking ticket, in the greater D.C. area.
I hate that for you.
As I was coming home from church. Should you be allowed to deliver a parking ticket when I'm hearing the good word? I feel like the answer to that should be no. I feel like if there's one thing that should be off limits from people that give parking tickets, you should let me worship in peace. But I was not given that freedom today.
So you got a parking ticket. Is this a parking ticket because you were in a spot you weren't supposed to be in? Is that what this was?
So no.
Or you don't want to divulge.
So here's why I got it was less of a ticket, more so just like a hey, you owe us money kind of a deal. There was no interest on it, which was very kind. So
all right.
Where we go to church, it is in a mall, right? Like there's just not a lot of space in the DC area, so like most people don't have their own buildings. They just find other places to hold service, right? So this church is located inside of a mall. So there's a parking deck that is accompanied with the mall. You have to pay to get in that parking deck 24/7. I thought Sunday was free. I was like, hey, it's Sunday. We should be free here. They said, yeah, capitalism, baby. 24/7. You are paying to be in this parking garage. I hadn't paid for 5 weeks. I just hadn't. I was like, I think it's probably free. Like, I don't really care. I'm just not going to pay. And no one's going to do anything about it because for 5 weeks, nobody did anything about it. And then I don't know what happened. They saw me come in, and whoever was manning the booth, they said, we are getting his ass today. So they ran up to the level where I was parked at, popped that bad boy on my windshield, and then when I was driving home, I happened to see it, so I had to pull over, make sure I don't lose it, because the one thing that would be worse than getting a parking ticket would then be losing the parking ticket, and now they're just on your ass. And now I got to pay even extra, even more.
You got more problems then.
More problems. So I kind of got messed up a little bit by my own doing, but it still wasn't a fun time.
A church inside of a mall. I've seen this before.
It's
only
unique.
one time before. It seems like a vibe. Like I've never been to one. I was shopping and I just passed by it. But it's like, two birds, one stone. You can go get your service in and then go
to the mall.
Go do some shopping or go to the food court. Do whatever.
Yeah, the
whatever
food
you want
court
to do.
is the big one, right? So you don't have to go very far if you want to partake in a little bit of brunch or some breakfast, depending on which service you go to, after the actual church service. Now you got to tip well, right? That's the thing. I went to Liberty. The word around Lynchburg was that people who go to church don't tip well after church. So you got to break the stigma a little bit. That's kind of what, if you're going to church, you might as well help the people that are serving you afterwards. So you got to tip well, but the food court down there is pretty good. But I would also like to point out, I went to the early service today. There's nothing else open except for the church. So like the guy that gave me the ticket, the guy that caught up to me for the money that I did owe him, but the guy that caught up to me and made me stop breaking the rules, he knew that I was there for church. And he said, we're getting him anyway.
See, that's the problem. Most things on Sundays, at least where I live, that I might want to go to, they don't open till like noon-ish. I don't know. I think you should have been given a pass. I think that's in poor taste for that cop to do that. That's not right.
Yeah,
I think he needs to go to church.
For real, I think he does. I thought we got 6 strikes. You know what I mean? Like after the sixth time maybe was the time where I had to pay. Well, here's a problem. I also didn't pay today. So, like, they charged me for 5. And I don't know if the 5 that they charged me for was including the service that I went to today, or if the next time that I go, I'm going to get another one and say, hey, you also didn't pay last week, because I also did not pay this week. We'll figure that out. That's going to be a come as you are kind of an environment here. It's Dent Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One Sports. We're taking your phone calls, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. If you want to jump in on the conversation, who is the best edge prospect in this year's draft? I just got done doing a little bit of a monologue on Ruben Bain. Maybe you love him. Let me know. You can tweet me as well at @TheDentonDay. I did discover something that took place on Saturday that is now at the top of my leaderboard of like massive loser behavior, right? Like, here are things that make you a loser. Not putting your shopping cart away. That is loser behavior. You better put that thing back. Not picking up poop after your dog. That's loser behavior. You know you were out there for your dog to poop. You got to put your dog's poop away. And now number 3 on the list. Going to an NFL combine and booing one of the prospects. That is loser behavior. And this is the only time, like, take a picture of this, hang this in the lavur. This is the only time I am ever going to ride for Carson Beck. I am not a Beckster, or whatever his fan base is called. I'm just not. I am out on Carson Beck.
A Beckster.
I am not a Beckster. I don't know. I might be trying to do a little bit too much with the Beckster thing there. Because you have like a beehive, a Beckhive maybe. I'm not a Beckhive. I'm not in the Beckhive. How about that?
Nah, I think the Beckster thing. I think you were on to something.
We'll go
there.
Beckster. I'm not a Beckster. But Carson Beck got booed doing drills at the combine, and I was watching on NFL Network, and they made it seem, and this was wrong from NFL Network. They said it was Indiana fans that were booing Carson Beck, and I would highly, like, flag on the turf. I'm planting it here. That was not Indiana fans that were booing Carson Beck. There is no chance. That was Notre Dame fans. That was the Notre Dame fans that traveled hours, plural, from Notre Dame to Indianapolis. It's like 2.5 hours, depending on how heavy your foot is when you drive. That traveled 2.5 hours south to get to Indianapolis to then boo Carson Beck. Because I thought about this, right? Like, Indiana is technically closer to Indianapolis, but why on earth would Indiana fans be booing Carson Beck? You beat him in the national championship in heartbreaking fashion for him. So, like, you already got what you wanted. You won the game. He threw a back-breaking interception to seal it. You should have no beef with him. It's the Notre Dame fans that have all the beef with him, because Notre Dame puts themselves on this pedestal that they are better than you, and that you should know that they are better than you. And they're exactly the kind of people, the Notre Dame fan base, that would travel hours, plural, to get in to Indianapolis for a free combine session to then boo one of the participants in the combine as he is looking to accomplish this dream of his to go pro and to play in the NFL. And I looked it up and I said, all right, well, let's see here. Notre Dame has 4 different players that are competing in drills, that are working out, so there's more of a likelihood that a general Notre Dame fan would want to be there, so they could see like a Jeremiah Love or like a Jadarian Price or whoever it is that was out there for them. But sitting there and booing a guy at a combine, like, here's where you're allowed, I think, to boo people. You can boo them in a game. Honestly, you can boo them on the street. If you have the stones to run up to Carson Beck as he's at Whole Foods or wherever the hell the guy shops, he just look, man, if you got money, you're probably shopping at a Whole Foods, right? If I were to have the kind of money that Carson Beck would have, you're not catching me at a Food Lion, all right? You're just not. No disrespect to Food Lion, but I'm going to Whole Foods. If you run up to that man at a Whole Foods and start booing him face to face, you got to live with the consequences, but you are entitled to do this. You are entitled to do that. If you want to do that, you can do that. I just feel like at a combine, when you know everyone is there to accomplish a dream, maybe not the time to do that, right? Like, you don't boo him at his wedding day. You want to crash his wedding, don't crash his wedding and boo him at his wedding day to either the Cavender or the porn star who he's dating. I don't know who he's dating currently at the time. I'm not up to date with the Carson Beck drama. However, if it was one of the Cavender twins that actually went to Indianapolis to boo him, that I might be okay with, because that's like a personal grudge here. It's not just a team versus a team thing. Because, again, I'd like to point out that Notre Dame did, in fact, lose. Like, you did not win when you played Carson Beck. Like, that factored into the equation of why you did not get to the college football playoff. And then you, by the way, backed out of the bowl game, in case they forgot about that one, too. So booing a guy at the combine, I put that one on the no list. I say, hey, that's not a very nice thing. We should not be partaking in that. Most of you don't know, because why would you? I was a summer camp counselor for a little bit at a different part of my life when I was trying to make this whole radio thing pop off in the way that it is currently popping off. It's hard to get a radio job out of college. So I had to take a job in between. I was a summer camp counselor. I had to counsel some kids, right? Be like, hey, you can't be booing people. You got to be nice to people. We got to be friends. Here's how you share. Here's how you play knockout. Like, I know these things. You can't boo a guy at a combine. Boo him elsewhere. You can't boo him at a combine. So I actually felt bad for Carson Beck. I don't think he's going to get drafted very high. And if he's your quarterback number 2, I'm going to boo you in your face. I still think Garrett Nussmeier's quarterback number 2. Mendoza's clearly quarterback number 1. Will, I haven't asked your take on this because, again, I said every single person that you're going to ask is probably going to have another take as who quarterback 2 is. We had Taylor Green earlier from Emory Hunt in our first hour of the show. Who is quarterback 2 as far as you're concerned?
It's dicey. It's not a deep draft, which makes it even more dicey. I tend to lean Ty Simpson just because it's like, okay, we've seen what we've seen. But the Nussmeier one is interesting, though, because it looked like LSU was actually going to be pretty decent this year until he got hurt. What was that, the Clemson game? Is that when that happened?
Yeah, he got hurt. He was the game against Ole Miss was the one that was like, oh, this is not their year. Because I looked at Ole Miss's defensive front, and I said, that's not like the greatest defensive front. They're good. They're not great. And they were chasing that man for the entire second half. He didn't stand a chance. That offensive line at LSU they were down so unbelievably bad. He was doomed from the get-go.
Yeah, it is an interesting one with Nussmeier just because we didn't get to see him finish the full season, and it seemed like things might go pretty good. So I think just on that alone, I might go Ty Simpson just because we got it tangible. By the way, booing somebody at the grocery store, that seems more like Food Line or Walmart behavior, not Whole Foods.
I would say, I don't know that
I go to Whole Foods. I don't think that's happening over there.
I don't know that they have the infrastructure to deal with somebody who would be booing at another person.
Yeah.
I think the cashiers would be a little out of their depths, like Whole Foods. Trader Joe's, probably not a good place to boo somebody. I do love some Trader Joe's. Wegmans, that feels like that's beneath them. So, like, they're going to be really upset. You might get kicked out. Honestly, it's better for your pockets for now. You got to be making Carson Beck money to go to Wegmans. I mean, that does feel like Walmart behavior, though. So maybe if you go to Walmart, boo somebody. But the reason I ask these questions, do you want this? Do you want that? Well, Will's going to ask me questions about draft prospects when we get back. This or that, it's coming up next on Westwood One with Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham.
The NFL Combine is underway. GMs are meeting, and trade season has officially sparked. We're breaking down the moves that could reshape the league and your team. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
We're talking fighting in the next 15 minutes, like legitimately. Who has the best fighters in their sport? Major League Baseball, NBA, that comes your way 15 minutes from now. But right now, we're sticking on the NFL draft. We're going to welcome in the producer of this show, Will Dalton, who's done a great job the last few weeks. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. We're going to play a little bit of this or that. So Will has compiled a bunch of prospects in this year's NFL draft, and he's going to give me options. I get to choose one. I get to choose the other. I'm excited about this. I did my studying. I watched a little bit of I didn't watch no film before this, but I'm ready for it, Will.
Ape. All right, let's start with the edge rusher position. Do you want Reuben Bain Jr. out of Miami, or do you want David Bailey out of Texas Tech?
So I'm taking David Bailey in this. It's less about Reuben Bain and more about David Bailey. He's been my favorite prospect for a long time now. And just watching him at Texas Tech, watching kind of the things that you can't teach, the bend around the corner. Also, this does not have a direct impact on how he's going to play. I recognize that. The fact that he's a defensive end with no gloves is crazy to me. Like that, there's swag within not having parts of swag, right? But the way that he bends around edges and the tackles, that to me is a really, really impressive trait to have at the college level. And I feel like he is on a way towards really building that up. You know, if he gets into a position, so like for me personally, as a guy that's based out of Washington, D.C. and a fan of the Commanders, I see a little bit of liking to a very young, not as polished, but like a very young Von Miller, right? They have some very similar tendencies. I think the length that he possesses, the speed that he possesses on the outside, all of that wrapped into a package with the fact that he can also play the run really, really well, with the fact that he's not afraid to tackle guys in the backfield, like big, burly guys, right? We talked with Emory Hunt at the beginning of this show, and he had mentioned how when you watch a guy like a Jeremiah Love, sometimes it looks like guys at the collegiate level are afraid to tackle him. And you watch that a lot in the NFL with a guy like Derrick Henry. There are a lot of cornerbacks that are going to tell you, hey, I'm making business decisions here. Like, I have nothing to do with what's going on there. I'm not interested. And they're going to back away. I don't feel like David Bailey's going to have any issues tackling the big dudes in the backfield. So I'm going to take David Bailey. I know we talked about Reuben Bain and the arm length and why I do feel like that's a little bothersome, but it's more so in this discussion about how much I love David Bailey and not about Reuben Bain's arms.
Yeah, and by the way, the point you made earlier about Will Campbell and how it was a whole thing with him, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And how they kept getting to Drake May in the playoffs. It's like, maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't.
We've seen this, and then when you take like, all right, his arms are 2 inches longer than that of Reuben Bain's. Like that's a big deal. That was kind of the nail there.
All right, let's get to a couple of wide receivers now. Carnell Tate out of Ohio State and Mekhi Lemon out of USC.
So much to what many people on Twitter might think, I don't think that Carnell Tate is slow, even though he ran a 4.5 and not a 4.4. I don't really care about the 40-yard dash. Like, I really don't. It's fun. It's Twitter fun. A week from now, guess who cares? Not me. You know why? Because you're never running straight line in a football field. You're getting bumped off the line of scrimmage. How quick twitch are you? Can you get across a guy? Can you cross a guy's face? Like, can you do all these different things? And I like Mekhi Lemon a lot. He didn't play in a position to where we got to watch him as much nationally, or just the common folk didn't watch him as much nationally. But, you know, USC at the end of the year last year, I paid a good amount of attention to him because they had aspirations of getting into the college football playoff, and mathematically they were alive really deep into the season of getting into the college football playoff. They ultimately did not. I really like Mekhi Lemon, but I'm going to go Carnell Tate in this instance. He's not my favorite receiver in this NFL draft, but I still think you're getting a guy. I don't really buy into this idea of like, hey, Jeremiah Smith was on the other side, so clearly his life was a lot easier. That's every Ohio State wide receiver ever. There's never just one good player at Ohio State. There's a multitude. They are wide receiver U at the moment right now. I think he's going to translate well to the NFL level. I think he still has the burners to be a good player on the outside. So I'm going to take Carnell Tate over Mekhi Lemon.
Now we get to the question that you asked me before we went to break about who is QB2 in this class. Is it Ty Simpson at Bama, or is it Garrett Nussmeier, who got hurt at LSU, didn't finish the year?
So I say it's Garrett Nussmeier, but I do think the gap has closed a little bit. And the reason is this, Will. I was not aware, and I don't think most people were aware, that Ty Simpson was dealing with a stomach issue, like a constant inflammation of the stomach throughout the season last year. That was not a public thing. I don't know that it needed to be made public, but I had always pointed to the game against LSU, ironically, saying, man, this is kind of where it feels like Ty Simpson flipped, or he took a little bit of a dive in terms of production, but less in terms of production and more in terms of what you expect to see when you're watching a top-tier quarterback play. In the early portion of the season, Ty Simpson, I thought, was the best quarterback in the nation. I thought he was making Sunday throws down the sideline, down the seam. He was reading the field really well and doing it all at Alabama, who was, compared to what we relatively see at Alabama, they had a talent discrepancy. They didn't have a great wide receiver. Their offensive line was getting blown through at a pretty regular basis. I know some people think that everybody just has a bunch of 5-stars sitting in the waitings, ready to go. That's not how that works. There's like 15 5-stars every single year. They're not all just on one team. So Alabama had a talent shortage from what we are accustomed to them seeing, but I felt like Ty Simpson was elevating everybody around him. So the gap has gotten a little bit closer because of the stomach stuff that I didn't know about, but I'm still going to lean Garrett Nussmeier, and I think Garrett Nussmeier's quarterback too.
So for the next one, it's not a deep first round for running back. It's not a deep first round for safety at all. So for this one, I kind of decided to mix and match one where it's like, okay, who's going to have more impact, between these two positions? I got a feeling I know where you might go on this. Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame or Caleb Downs at Ohio State?
I have spent many of days and weeks now engulfed in this conversation because it feels like right now both of those guys are going to be available at 7. I support the Washington Commanders. That is where they're drafting. So I've been locked into these discussions with the fan base on Twitter. Do we go this way? Do we go that way? How is it going to look? And really it comes down to how you value the positions. Running back has seen a resurgence, if you will, and that's thanks largely to Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, right? Guys that can do it all out of the backfield. They can catch passes. They can hit the home runs. Derrick Henry that as well, though he's not as prolific when it comes to catching the football out of the backfield. But you have these guys that are home run hitters that elevate what could be a good offense to a great offense. On the flip side, you got safety who, if you have a guy that is a legitimate top-tier safety, is the general on a defense, and he can flip the field, right? Like that's one of the things I love about the position. Ed Reed was awesome for a lot of different things. His biggest strength was his ability to flip the field because on any given play, he could come away with a turnover. That could be an interception, that could be a fumble, and not only could he come away with that, if he's picking you off inside the 10-yard line, he is taking that thing the distance, right? Or he's going to try his best. So I think the safety position is a really, really interesting one. And Caleb Downs, if you talk to everybody in Ohio State, around Ohio State, and in the lead up to the draft, the conversation always shifts to IQ. This guy's so smart. He's so intelligent. And for that reason, I'm taking Caleb Downs. I think the longevity of safety is at a higher value than that of a running back. And if you're thinking about, hey, we want this guy to be with our organization for 2 contracts, right? I think you're looking at Caleb Downs and saying there's a much bigger likelihood of him being there for 2 contracts than a running back is. I still think you're probably going to sign Jeremiah Love to a 2nd contract regardless of how he plays in his first couple of years. But I think the longevity, I'm going to take safety over running back.
Let's get to the linebacker position. We got a couple of Buckeyes here. So you got Arvell Reese and you got Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
Who do you go with?
This is tough, right? Because they're both freaks, but they're different kinds of freaks, right? Like Sonny Styles is this athletic specimen that can play everywhere on the field. If you need him to get after the passer, he's capable of doing that. He's not going to do that on a consistent basis, but he's capable of doing that. He can play the run. He can get after quarterbacks if they get on the outside, which in a lot of divisions you have to deal with that, right? You got your Lamar Jacksons, your Jane Daniels, guys that are not afraid to tuck in and run, right? Caleb Williams has started to do that a lot more frequently. So I think that's a very nice luxury to have. With that said, I'm going to take Arvell Reese. Sonny Styles is a great player, and I think he's going to be a great player. I'm shying away, though, a little bit from making a rash change in my thought based off of what I saw at the Combine, right? Like the vertical leap is crazy. How many times are you vertically leaping in a college game, right? Then I do think the 40 is impressive, but the 40, it is funny how much Sonny Styles was praised for what he did this week, as he should have been. And people didn't really say much about Arvell Reese, despite the fact that they ran basically the exact same 40 time. So I'm gonna take Arvell Reese in this one over Sonny Styles.
There's two offensive tackles that a lot of people have up high in their big boards. That's Francis Maui-Noah out of Miami, and then you got Spencer Fano out of Utah.
I'm going to take Spencer Fano. I love
Really?
a tackle out of Utah. There's just something. There's something about that school in particular from an offensive line standpoint where I am always going to lean. It's like if you're giving me a tight end out of Iowa, I'm going to take the tight end out of Iowa. If you're giving me a white cornerback out of Iowa, I'm going to take the white cornerback out of Iowa. There's something about it's
Tough.
It's the Mormons. It's the BYU and the Utah kids. I'm taking the big guys on the line of scrimmage from those schools. So I would take Fano. I would take Fano at the tackle spot. This has been this or that. Big thanks to Will. Great decisions. Great pairings of players. If I got any wrong, you can tweet me at the Denton Day 310-840-4910. Who can fight better? Major League Baseball players, NBA players. We dive into it next on Westwood One Sports.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Is Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. You can call me D-Day if this is your first time listening. You can connect with me on Twitter at the Denton Day. Phone lines open just a little bit longer, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. An update around the world of sports. We got some spring training going on across Major League Baseball. That's always very, very exciting because it means we're getting closer and closer to actual baseball being played and what could be the last year for a little bit of actual baseball being played. Big time upset in the Big Ten in college basketball. The Big Ten has done this thing very, very smartly, I would argue. They're just taking over Sundays. We're going to put ranked teams and play them on Sundays when there's not a lot else going on. Like maybe you're watching some NBA stuff, but Purdue and Ohio State took place before any NBA game tipped off, and Ohio State gave Purdue the business. They went 82-74. I'm out on Purdue. Dunzo. Don't want any part of them. I love Matt Painter. I think he's an excellent coach. I think his team stinks. I don't think they're very good, and I don't trust them. And I know, generally speaking, as we get closer and closer to building your bracket out so you can win your office pool, so you can make yourself a little bit of money, generally speaking, you want to pick teams that have great guards. I think Braden Smith's a really good guard. I just don't like the way that Purdue plays basketball. This year in particular, I'm completely out on them. They've lost 6 of the last 11. How would I trust them to win 6 in a row when they can't win 6 of 11 against a Big Ten schedule? You're going to play teams better than Ohio State, and you just lost to Ohio State. I know it was on the road, but God help me, it's not like Columbus is the most disastrous place to play basketball in, and you still couldn't get it done. A couple other good NBA games that are going to be going on. You get Minnesota is in action right now. You get Philadelphia and Boston tonight. That's the nightcap Sunday night basketball. So you'll see that one. But Minnesota and Denver going at it. That one's in the fourth quarter with Minnesota hanging on to a 9-point lead. The reason I bring up basketball is because I stumbled across a clip from Buster Olney's podcast. I love Buster Olney. He's talking baseball, but Charles Barkley was on the podcast. And we've seen over the past few weeks in the NBA some basketball players get into some scraps, some hands being thrown on the floor. We had seen a situation this weekend with what I would call a cheap shot from Lou Dort of OKC, and then Jokic got mad, and there's this now viral picture of Jokic mean-mugging several of the Oklahoma City Thunder players, but it's brought up this question of who can fight. Can the NBA fight? And Buster Olney, because he's on a baseball podcast with Charles Barkley, asked Charles Barkley who can fight better, baseball players or basketball players. Here was the response from Chuck.
We know hockey players are the best fighters, right? Who
Yes.
are better fighters, NBA players or baseball players?
Neither one of them can fight, Buster. Neither one of them can fight. Baseball players, I tell you, one thing that annoys me about baseball, when two outfielders run into each other and they both look like they're dead, that tells me right there they can't fight. I don't think either one of us can fight. Obviously there are a couple exceptions, but most NBA players can't fight.
So Charles Barkley says neither of them. I would push back a little bit. I'm curious, though, the thought of the country. We're national. We're nationwide, baby. 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. If we're putting together a Royal Rumble and you're only using baseball players and basketball players, one, who are you throwing in the Royal Rumble? And who ends up being victorious at the end? Is it a baseball player or is it a basketball player? So I did this bit where I started to Google, Will, and I'm like, all right, what are great baseball brawls? Because one of my pet peeves in this particular business is when the bench is clear, but there's no fighting. Yet it's described in a notification or in a tweet as the brawl. They're brawling because the bench is cleared. Yet I'm watching and I'm seeing a whole lot of pushing and a whole lot of shoving. And this is not advocating violence. I think I legally have to say that. I'm not advocating for violence. Now that legality is out of the way.
Yeah.
If you're going to tease me with a brawl, like I at least want to see a brawl, right? Like if you're going to say, guys, you're fighting, I need to see fighting. If you're going to say someone is getting punched in the face, I need to see somebody getting punched in the face. That applies to baseball and maybe to Duke basketball. But I need to see some like fists being thrown, right? We saw that recently in the NBA, and not so much with like the Jokic stuff, but with the stuff that was kind of close to home with you, with the Charlotte Hornets and the Detroit Pistons. But I'm curious because you're a former baseball player, played college ball. Do you think baseball players can fight? Were you guys boxing in locker rooms? How was that working?
We weren't boxing in locker rooms, but I would be doing a disservice if I didn't give baseball players the edge on this. I would have a lot of people upset with me. NBA players have the size, all right?
Right.
They do. It's true. And Chuck went on to talk about that a little bit further down the road in his explanation. But I feel like baseball players are better at fighting, though, because there's more. Like when you see a hitter charge the mound, he has intent. He's
moving
clear
speed.
intent. He's going. Like when a couple of basketball players start shoving and stuff like that, you don't like. It might develop into a fight, but when a hitter is charging a mound, you know what's happening.
Yeah, most guys I think generally don't want to fight, especially in basketball. One, because like you're going to get docked. It's going to be a lot of money. And same in baseball. You're going to get docked a lot of money. Here's where I think baseball has the edge, right? I'm going to get let's break down the opponents, right? From a hand speed standpoint, you're not touching baseball. I think the hand speed for baseball is going to be far superior to that of a basketball player. I also feel like, depending on who you're fighting, if you're fighting a guy, let's just say, guy can hit for power. The hips are going to favor that of a baseball player.
There's some torque there.
There's some torque there. I recreational, and I cannot stress this enough, recreationally boxed. I didn't get in the ring. I don't want no problems, right? I'm not trying to be like the beat my chest guy. Please don't fight me. You want to fight me? You're going to see why I was the captain of the track team in high school. I'm going the other way. I don't want to fight. With that said, I did recreational box, and the hips, I just learned how important the torque of the hips are when delivering an impactful punch. And I feel like that gives an advantage to baseball. But man, the wingspan of these NBA guys are crazy, bro. Like crazy. Some of these dudes got 7-foot wingspans. How are you even going to get close to this dude?
I mean, you do have a Steven Adams out there.
You got Isaiah Stewart.
James Johnson.
James Johnson is the one seed in this entire thing. Like if you
he's
are
got
squaring
MMA
up,
background.
If you're squaring up with James Johnson, do not reevaluate your life choices. You have made a mistake. There is no world where anybody is going to beat James Johnson.
I'll tell you how crazy Isaiah Stewart is. Because, again, you mentioned the Hornets-Detroit brawl
He was a part of that
several weeks ago. He was a part of that, and he wasn't in the game. He was on the bench. and Miles Bridges and Duran, they start going at it. And Stu, he doesn't even take the ice packs off his knees. He's still got a blue warm-up on, and he just goes for Miles Bridges. That's how much this dude just wants to fight.
I mean,
it's recreation for him.
Glass shatter. He's Stone Cold Steve Austin in the 90s, ready to walk out onto that floor and whip some ass. You don't need a whole lot to get him going. I'll give you one better when it comes to Isaiah Stewart. I have seen many of his highlights. Not a single one has ever involved a basketball. I have never seen a single highlight of this dude playing actual basketball. I see him try and fight LeBron. I've seen him in that fight. I've seen him in a fight, I think it was with the Phoenix Suns. Like, I can list the fights that this dude has been in or attempted to be in. I have not seen him put a layup in. I haven't seen him dunk. He called himself Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if that's because he was defending his teammates or if he was defending the basket, because I've seen him do one of the things. I have not seen him do the other. That dude is literally on the floor to fight. And by the way, if I'm Detroit, I'm keeping him forever. Lambeer was your guy in the 90s when you were the bad boys. Draymond was the guy for the Warriors when his role there primarily was to be like the tough guy. He did some other things Draymond did, so I'm not going to discredit him like that. But you got to have a tough guy on your team to make sure that people aren't messing with you. I would keep that dude for forever and a half.
Do you remember about a decade ago when the Rangers and the Blue Jays played, and it was Odor that clocked Jose Batista?
I mean,
that is a perfect example of the quick torque that you were describing, where it was
bang bang,
boom, and that was a solid, straight up punch, bar fight,
full connection. Like when you're taught to punch, you want the first two knuckles to be what is connecting. He got every bit of those, and he might have got a third knuckle in there. Like, that's the thing that scares me a little bit about baseball players in this discussion, which I think I'm talking myself into leading baseball players because of the intangibles and the torque and such. The quiet ones are the ones that you're afraid of. You're not afraid in a fight, generally speaking. Like, if you're at a bar, right, and they're drinking too much and they're blabbering, I'm going to fight everybody, I'm going to knock you out, I'm going to knock you out, I'm going to do all these different things. The night ends for that person usually with them getting cold clocked. And they don't put up much of a fight in return, right? That's just how it goes, because the loudmouths are the ones that usually they're making up for something, right? Little man syndrome, whatever it is, they're making up for something. The quiet guys are the ones that you're afraid of, and it does feel like that there's a lot of guys in baseball that are more on the quiet side, and that scares me. Like, I didn't know Odor had it in him, but he was ready to go, and he said, "This is happening. We're making this happen. Bing, bang, boom, dunzo."
There was somebody, I can't remember who it was, years ago that threw the bat towards the mound. I can't remember who it was.
Was that Yasiel Puig? Because Puig got in a big-time fight. I think it was Pirates-Reds. And that was the last true, the one that I remember most vividly, true, legitimate brawl that took place in Major League Baseball. I know Bryce Harper attempted and failed miserably at throwing his helmet at a pitcher in San Diego. That game took place in Washington. That game also, I believe, ended the career of Michael Morse because Jeff Samardzija came skyrocketing, trying to hit Bryce Harper in the noggin, missed, and hit his own teammate in Michael Morse, who was a former National who was trying to break things up. And I don't think Michael Morse played after that because he got like Superman punched. If you're familiar with the world of professional wrestling, he got what Roman Reigns does to people in wrestling. That happened to Michael Morse, but for real, right? He just got cold clocked, and I don't think he played again. Who did throw the bat though? Because I know what you're talking about.
Well, I will tell you one, not where the hitter threw the bat, but in Game 2 of the 2000 World Series, the Subway Series between the Yankees and the Mets. I'm a Yankee fan. Yankee hat on right now. It was Roger Clemens going up against Mike Piazza.
Yes.
And Piazza's bat broke, and the barrel of it went up to the mound, and Clemens just takes it and he just chucks it at Mike Piazza. So that wasn't even the hitter doing it. It just, again, baseball players get the edge in this. They got it.
I think that there's a crazy to baseball players that I think is unpredictable.
There is.
So I would lean baseball on that as well. What do you say? 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. I did get a tweet that I would like to read in relation to the story I told about getting a parking ticket from church.
Oh, no.
So my guy, Commander Jigga, tweeted at me and said, bro, I got one better. And when you see I got one better to my story about getting a parking ticket coming back from church, that usually means it's not great. He said, I'm at my local Giant and I checked out my groceries. I got outside the store and I noticed I didn't pay for one item. So I returned back inside the store and paid. First of all, great human right there. Because I've done this before, and I got to admit, I did not go back in the store. I once shoplifted a $2 mug from an unnamed establishment that's probably in the neighborhood near you, and I did not go back in because they have these sensors set up. It's their job to figure that out, not mine. They would not do the same to me if they gypped me $2. So I did not do that, but he did. And then he said, finally got to my car and saw that somebody had hit my front fender. It was a hit and run. So he was being a generational human being, right? Just a great person.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to go help out. I did something wrong. I'm going to make up for the wrong that I have committed. And then he comes back out to the car and he is the victim of a hit and run. I'll tell you what, I'd be furious. I'd be furious.
It doesn't always work out in your favor.
It does. Sometimes life throws you lemons, and sometimes life throws rocks at you. And you just have to decide which one is coming towards you. Now, I would say, like, so if this instance happened, and you just went back in to go pay, I'm marching right back in there and saying, I need to see cameras. I need to see cameras here. I was a victim of a hit and run because I was trying to be a good Samaritan and basically pay you this multi-million, I don't know, Food Line's $1 billion company, but multi-million-dollar company. Like, did you really need the $4? Probably not, but I was a good enough human to give you the $4. I'm going to go back in here and say, you're going to show me the camera and the license plate, and I'm going to catch the guy that hit my car because I gave you your $4. And I feel like that is the least that a Giant or a Food Line or whatever that they could do.
I feel like they would have obliged him in that, like, because they had to have appreciated. They had to have appreciated him coming back. Hey, by the way, I didn't pay for the stuff. Like, who does that?
Hey, by the way, the sensors that you have all over the place as you leave, they didn't get the barcode, and I noticed that myself. By the way, I would never notice that either. In my particular story with the mug, I didn't notice that until I got home. So I left the establishment, made the trek home, pulled out all of the stuff, and my wife is doing this bit, and she's got me on it too. There's this app where you can scan receipts, you can get points. And then you can use those points. You have that app. Yeah, it's gotten me many a Barnes & Noble gift cards, some Amazon gift cards. So we're doing this thing, right? We scan it, and then she's like, I don't see the mug on this receipt. And I was like, what do you mean the mug's not on the receipt? It's in the bag. Like, I just walked out. Of course it's in there. And I looked at the receipt, and I was like, ooh, your boy just shoplifted a mug. But it was $2. If it was $10, I might have went back. Probably not. But I might have went back. But for $2, I still shop there, by the way, too. That's why I'm not saying the name of the place in the event where they are listening. Because we are on in my local market, and I don't want, the local general manager of this particular establishment to be like, hey, 7 months ago, that dude took a $2 mug for Easter, and I didn't like that very much. That's my car. That's why I got hit with the parking ticket at church. Last year, I took a $2 mug that was Easter-themed, and now God got me back and said, you owe $10 of parking because you didn't pay for the last 5 times. It was only $2 to pay, too. So literally the parking ticket that I have now turned into 2.5 or a segment and a half here, Will, was literally for $10. Like, that's it. My dinner that I have on the way of Chipotle was more expensive than the parking ticket. $10. I once got billed for a parking ticket that was $2. I'm like, it costs you more to send this to me than it is for me to pay it. I was like, you've got to be kidding.
It's the principle of it.
It is the principle. I didn't think the government or whoever ran that had principle, but apparently they did. Will's going to help us put the show to bed in about 30 minutes. Coming up next, the ceiling for Fernando Mendoza, why I don't think that he is as good as some of our most recent prospects. I'll tell you why that is when we get back. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One Sports.
There's some big names on the trade block. Jalen Waddle, Max Crosby, A.J. Brown. Where are they going, and how will the moves impact your team? We'll tell you as it happens. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports, sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. This is the last call for phone calls, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number one overall pick in this April's NFL draft. That is a fact. I'm not going to dispute that. I don't believe that he is going to walk in, though, immediately and resurrect a bad organization and lift them to the heights of heaven, shall we say, if I just want to maintain the biblical metaphor there. He is going to be a guy that needs a little bit of time in the NFL. He didn't throw at the combine. That's okay. The combine is not meant for guys to throw at. It's not. The combine is meant to meet players. That's it. Like, we celebrate the 40 times because it's cool. We celebrate the vertical jumps because it's cool. Bench presses because it's cool. But the combine is about getting everybody in one central location, meeting with teams, coaches, other players potentially that could become teammates, and then also kind of gossiping, getting the rumor run. Hey, what is a certain team feeling like they're going to do in free agency? How does that affect what we're going to do in free agency? Hey, who does a certain guy want to go to as far as a team is concerned? How does that impact how we view him? How does that impact what we are going to do if he becomes available at our spot? Like, it's about information. Information is currency in the NFL. But what we have learned with Fernando Mendoza, what I have learned with Fernando Mendoza, is he checks every single box. He checks every single box from an IQ standpoint, from a teammate standpoint, from a competitive leader standpoint. But when I watch him with my eyes, there's still a few boxes that I'm not 100% sure that he does check. And I always like to do this thing where I compare them to guys of years previous, of quarterbacks in specific. I feel like it's the easiest position to compare on a year-by-year basis to. And say, hey, how would this player stack up if he was in this class? And I do believe that if Fernando Mendoza had the season that he did and just happened to come out last year, he would have been the number one overall pick. I think you take Fernando Mendoza over Cam Ward when he came out of Miami. I think he would have been the number one overall pick in that draft. The year before then is where things start to get a little dicey because that was the most loaded quarterback class that we've seen in a very, very long time. So I think you're taking Caleb Williams over Fernando Mendoza. I think you're taking Jaden Daniels over Fernando Mendoza. You're taking Drake May over Mendoza. And then you get to the conversation of like a Michael Penix or a J.J. McCarthy. And I know Michael Penix didn't win the Heisman Trophy his senior season or his final season at Washington. That obviously went to Jaden Daniels. But I think people forget how much of a dog Michael Penix was in college because he hasn't been very good in the NFL. And that's fine if you're looking at it purely from an NFL lens. But Penix was the really, really good prospect coming out of college if he fell to the right system. And you were hoping that Atlanta was going to be that. But when it comes to a natural thrower of the football, Penix was one of the best that we have seen, right? He was accurate down the field. Great deep ball, could throw over the middle of the field, could throw at the sideline. I think there would have been a real conversation to be had there with Mendoza and with Michael Penix. Maybe you lean Mendoza, maybe you lean Michael Penix. That's up to you and your personal, how you see the game. But I think that's where the conversation would have started to take place in that draft class. You're taking Penix, or you're taking Mendoza over J.J. McCarthy, bar none. You're taking him over Bo Nix, bar none. The Michael Penix, though, I think there might have been a little bit of a discussion to be had there. And then you kind of go back year by year by year, right? Like the Trevor Lawrence here, you're going to take Trevor Lawrence over Fernando Mendoza. Maybe you take Zach Wilson. Here's the thing. Zach Wilson now in the NFL, not very good, right? We've seen this. We know this. We don't need to see more of it. At BYU, though, he was an electrifying player. I never really bought into the Zach Wilson hype. It just wasn't my bag, wasn't my cup of tea. I kind of knew at the time what BYU was as a football program. They have elevated now. Please don't come for me, BYU fans. They've elevated their program now. But at the time when Zach Wilson was there, they weren't all that impressive to me. And he did some cool things, but he did some cool things that you're watching. You're like, that is not going to work in the NFL. That was kind of when everybody was trying to be Patrick Mahomes. So they're trying to do all these like super off-platform throws, super off-schedule, throwing across the field, like all that stuff that you knew if you watch NFL football That is not going to work for everybody. In fact, Mahomes is such a big deal because it should not be working for him, and it does. So I take Mendoza over Zach Wilson. The interesting draft would then have been the Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud draft, because where does Mendoza factor in to there? I think from a personality standpoint, he would win you over more than those two guys. Not that they have bad personalities, but Fernando Mendoza, from a personality standpoint, is such an easy guy to root for because it's almost like he's too nice for his own good. Like, I don't know how to describe it. He's too innocent. Like, he feels innocent. He's too innocent for his own good, and that could be appealing because you think he's literally just going to be watching film. Like, I don't know what he does for nightlife. I don't know that he has a nightlife. I think he watches film. And if you're trying to build an organization and draft your franchise cornerstone, it would be appealing to me to draft a guy that literally doesn't do anything. Hey, you're going to go home and you're going to maybe stop by like Cookout, and then you're going to go watch film. I think Mendoza would be an interesting guy to pair up against like a Bryce Young and a C.J. Stroud. Bryce Young in the NFL, the height has been a severe limitation, but he was disgusting in college. Like, disgusting in college. The accuracy was insane. And it's the throws that like a Bryce Young would make that I was desperately wanting to see from Fernando Mendoza. And he just didn't in college. He made big plays when his team needed to have big plays be made. The game against Ohio State, that over-the-shoulder throw on a big-time possession late in the game, that was massive. He excels in comeback routes, which is a tough throw to make, but that's something I noticed. The back shoulder, the comeback route, like Fernando Mendoza throws a hell of a ball when it comes to that play design. He can run, he can do a bunch of different things, but when it comes to the elite of the elite, I don't know that he's walking into an NFL franchise and immediately taking them from the number one overall pick and elevating them all the way up to a team that's going to be picking in the 20s because they won 10 games and they made it to the playoffs for the first time in quite some time, right? I just don't see that. And you can pair him with Tom Brady and nurture that over years to maybe in year number 2, year number 3, you start to see that. But I just don't think, like, Jane Daniels and C.J. Stroud are very much in every way, shape, or form the anomaly. You are not supposed to come in and take a team that was drafting super high in the NFL draft and immediately make them awesome. That is not how that's supposed to go. With Stroud, you drafted Will Anderson in there as well, and you had some really talented wide receivers out there. But a large majority of what happened successfully for Stroud and Houston in his rookie year was on the basis of him. And the same exact thing for Jane Daniels. Didn't have a great year number 2. That Commanders roster was not very good outside of like Terry McLaurin, but Jane Daniels elevated everybody. I don't know that Mendoza is that. I just don't. I don't see that when I watch him. I don't see that. I think his Indiana team was good. I don't think they were excellent, but I also didn't think there was a lot of excellent teams in college football in general this year, the way that they have been in years past, to properly judge him. Like, I remember watching Joe Burrow, who's a name that has been kind of compared to Fernando Mendoza a little bit, mostly because they won the Heisman Trophy. But I remember watching Joe Burrow at LSU, and I'm thinking, this guy's obviously the number 1 overall pick. He is slicing and dicing everybody, and he's going to be great in the NFL because the offense that they're running can be run in the NFL, and he's going to be awesome. He gets to a Super Bowl in year number 2. Now, injuries have kind of deterred him a little bit. The Bengals' defense has deterred him a little bit. I thought Joe Burrow was going to be awesome. He walked in, and he was pretty awesome in year number 2. Maybe Mendoza has that, kind of like the Joe Burrow, the Drake May in year number 2. I'm going to be really, really good, but it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm not as over the moon with, well, he's really good in a press conference, so he gets it. He's obviously going to be great. I'm not. I need to see it on the field, and it always felt like when I was watching him in relation to some of these other players that there was just a little bit left to be desired still. That there was just a little bit missing, and they were winning games, so who really cared? And his objective was to win a national championship. That's fair. But when you're elevating guys and making the jump from college to the professionals, I wanted a little bit more from Fernando Mendoza, and it felt like I never got that. But he's going to be mentored by Tom Brady, and that means a whole lot. It means a whole lot as far as I'm concerned because Tom Brady is really, really good, and it's very clear that Tom Brady is now very involved with what is going on in Las Vegas. More on that in a second. But I want you to hear from Fernando Mendoza. This was Fernando Mendoza on what it's going to be like to be potentially mentored by Tom Brady when Vegas eventually takes him number 1 overall.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't admired Tom Brady? The guy has, I mean, more Super Bowl rings than anybody. So that opportunity would be fantastic. Tom Brady, I believe, is the greatest quarterback of all time by a wide margin, and to be able to have the opportunity to be mentored by him it would mean so much, and especially to learn, and I'm all about learning. So from day one, I got to learn a lot, and it's going to be a long journey, and to potentially have a mentor like that would be pretty impressive and pretty meaningful.
Joe Montana fans are seething. What do you mean a wide margin? Tom Brady's better by a wide margin than Joe Montana? Yes, he is. But again, he checks that box so well. I think he gives great effort. I think he's a smart kid. He's never going to give up, a tough season, bad play. I think he's going to be right back out there. But I think I'm being poisoned. Not literally. But I think I'm being mentally poisoned by the term generational. I hate that word. I hate it. I think it's the worst. And I think too many people rush to call quarterbacks generational. And I don't buy it. I think there are such a few small, limited amount of quarterbacks or players in general that are legitimately generational. When you break that word down to its simplest form, it means once in a generation, and a generation's a long time. But there are 3 quarterbacks that I think have been legitimately generational. And I heard somebody call Fernando Mendoza on the mothership generational. I think it was McAfee, but it was somebody else too. They called him generational, and I immediately was just I'm triggered by that. I'm saying no. The 3 generational quarterbacks that we have seen in the last 15 years are Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, and Caleb Williams. And Mendoza's not that. You don't have to be generational to be a great player. Stroud was not. Jaden Daniels was not. Bo Nix was not. He's had success. You don't have to be generational to be a great player, but I just hate positioning a guy as generational as you're trying to make this point about, oh, I really like him. You can just tell me that you really like him. You don't have to stretch the truth to say, oh, he's this generational prospect, as if we've never seen a guy like Fernando Mendoza. We've seen plenty of guys like him. But with Lawrence, he was the number 1 overall pick after his freshman year. Then he played 2 more seasons, and he was still the number 1 overall pick. That's a really difficult thing to do. Andrew Luck was in a similar spot. He could have been the number 1 overall pick in 2011. He came back, played another year, and guess what? He was still the number 1 overall pick, even ahead of Robert Griffin, who had this crazy Heisman year at Baylor. Same thing with Caleb Williams. He replaces Spencer Rattler, who was supposed to be the number 1 pick that year. That didn't work out. He replaces Spencer Rattler, plays well, gets the job at USC when Lincoln Riley takes the job at USC, has this crazy Heisman year. Oh, this guy's going to be the number 1 overall pick next year. And then still was the number 1 overall pick, despite the fact that Jaden Daniels had a crazy year. So the ability to continually position yourself as the number 1 overall pick for years, plural, is to me what defines a guy that's generational, because we saw it and then we continue to see it over the course of years, where oftentimes we see it one year and then a guy falters a little bit. Spencer Rattler's an example of that. Carson Beck is an example of that. Sam Howell, the list goes on and on and on of guys that were projected top 5 picks that didn't become that. Again, that's not to say you need to be that to be good, but in just hearing, hey, I think Mendoza is a generational player, and then him not being a I cannot make that sort of math compute in my brain. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting in for Josh Graham here on Westwood One Sports. When we get back, our guy Will Dalton is going to put this show to bed. We also got some breaking news out of the college basketball space that we need to get to. All that when we return. Don't go anywhere. It's Westwood One Sports.
How long will the Steelers wait for a decision from Aaron Rodgers? Or could Mike McCarthy and company be in the market for a QB like Malik Willis in free agency? Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Wrapping up the show here, it's Denton Day in on Westwood One Sports, sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. We're going to put the show to bed with Will Dalton in a matter of moments, but we do have a little bit of breaking news out of college basketball. This comes by way of the USC Trojans. Chad Baker-Mazara is done at USC. It was reported about 45 minutes ago that he is no longer a part of the basketball program at USC. Now, Chad Baker-Mazara is 26 years old. This is his fifth college basketball team. I feel pretty comfortable firing at the hip and saying this is it for him in college basketball. You either got to test the waters in the NBA or go find a country that you enjoy. That could be Italy. That could be Spain. There are great European leagues that you could go play in, and I have heard wonderful stories, some hilarious, about what goes down in European League basketball, but it is time to move on. He played, I mean, get this, he started college in 2020. That literally feels like a lifetime ago because think of how different the world was in 2020. But he started there at Duquesne, then he transferred to San Diego State, then he played at Northwest Florida State. I don't even know what that is. I would guess it's in Florida. Look at me being smart. I have never heard of Northwest Florida State. Played a couple of years at Auburn and then transferred to USC, and now he's done so. It's been a very, very odd stretch, and what sucks is, he was playing really good basketball for USC. Like, he was averaging close to 20 points a game for USC. I mean, they hadn't had the best season in the world, 11th in the Big Ten. Not a lot of high hopes of making it to the NCAA tournament unless they, go on a deep run in the Big Ten tournament and potentially win the damn thing. But a very odd situation. We don't have a lot of the details now, which is why I can't give you a ton of details and too much opinion on why exactly it is that he left. Because one thing I'm going to wait and do before I start just destroying a guy is make sure I have all the opinion or the facts in terms of what went down and what led to him leaving. But he wasn't sitting on the bench in the second half of USC's most recent game. He was still courtside, but he just wasn't sitting with his teammates. And that's a big, big sign. That's a red flag, and that is waving when a guy's not sitting with the teammates. You could be on the court doing something different, but not sitting with them, you're waving the red flag. All right, let's bring in Will Dalton here. It's been a good show so far. We're going to land this plane beautifully. So Will Dalton is here, and he is going to put the show to bed.
Do they have Winn-Dixie out your way?
Like napkins and paper plates?
No. Well, it's a grocery store.
Oh.
You don't know what Winn-Dixie is?
No, they don't know. Is there like a paper plate company that's called Winn-Dixie, or am I just like totally off the wall? Maybe it's called Dixie Plates or something.
That's it. They make the red Solo cups and whatnot. Yeah. You're onto that. That happens. So this guy, what's even crazier than that is he is now allegedly arrested after stealing $10,000 worth of groceries over the course of 8 months from Winn-Dixie. So, Stu lives in Florida. $10K. So he lives in Florida. Investigators are saying that he somehow, and they're not telling us how he did this either.
I'd like to know.
I would too. We all would like to know.
My note-taking purposes,
Well, see, that's why they don't want to tell us. They don't want anybody getting any ideas. So they're saying that he avoided paying full price for steaks, chicken wings, laundry detergent, diapers, and toilet paper.
There you go. I mean, all very, common things that a man would need.
Yeah. So, detectives caught this guy after he apparently hit the same stores more than 100 times. I mean, it took some doing, $10,000 worth.
Yeah, that's $10 a time if you're hitting the same store 100 times, right? Is my math right?
Yeah.
That would be.
I believe so.
Is that 1,000 or?
I'm not a big math guy.
I think that's 1,000 times, so we need to do a little bit more than. But still, like that takes some real legwork, right? It's not like you're doing a heist all in one go.
You're not, and it spanned 4 different Winn-Dixies. So full disclosure, I live in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Greensboro, and we used to have a Winn-Dixie like right up the road from where I currently live, and it went out of business years ago. Yeah. So when I see stories about Winn-Dixie, one, I'm shocked because I forget, there are still Winn-Dixies out there. But 2, it's like, it's a little nostalgic. But yeah, he
$10,000. So I have some questions about this. I don't think you'll be able to answer all of them because you're not in the mind of the guy. But the one that you'll be able to answer because you're in North Carolina, what level, like if we're ranking grocery stores in tiers, like Whole Foods and Wegmans are at the top, right? Like where's Winn-Dixie? Is it like Publix level? Harris Teeter? Is it like, Walmart, Food Line? Is it like Dollar General? Like where is it on the tiers? I would assume if it has steak, it's above Dollar General. Like I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, but if you're buying steak at Dollar General, I would assume that's not on the list there.
It's better than Food Line.
Okay.
I would probably put it right under Publix. Publix is a little better quality than Winn-Dixie is.
I've heard the pub subs are something to die over. I would imagine
pub subs.
It's just a sandwich from a grocery store. I can't imagine it's anything crazy special.
See, my dad, he gets chicken tenders from Publix.
Are the chicken tenders good?
Yeah, they're pretty solid. Do I hear a squeak toy in the background?
My dog is going nuts. My wife just left to go get dinner, and my dog is going nuts on a squeaky toy. This is a hilarious story, kind of hilarious story. My dog had cancer, right? He is officially in remission, so we're good, right? He knows.
That's good.
And the energy that he has gotten since going into remission has been insane. And here's the thing. He has my wife and I wrapped on his paw. Because we just buy this dude toys and he's literally squeaking right now, or he just got done because I kind of snapped at him. But he just got done squeaking like this squid toy. Why did I get him a squid toy, Will? He doesn't like water. He doesn't know what a squid is. But I saw it and I was like, that's pretty cute. And I went and I bought it for him. I was not a dog guy 5 years ago until I met this dude. I would literally overthrow a government. That's a joke. I'd literally overthrow a government if this dude asked me to. Like, I was never a dog person, and now I would change the course of human history if he really needed me to.
I get it. I don't have a dog, but, like, if you go on my Instagram Explore page, half of it
it's just
is
all dogs.
It's Huskies, it's Dachshunds. Those are my two favorites. And then the rest of it's just Star Wars stuff. So, that's what you're going to get.
And Will is a big Star Wars guy. So I'm going back to this theft here, right? Because $10,000 is a lot of groceries, and you answered one of my questions in the story itself because I wanted to know like what was he spending the money on? Because I can think of some things that I would spend $10,000 on at a high-level grocery store, right? Like we're talking filet mignon for everybody. I'm flying people out of our Culver City studios, and they're hanging out in D.C. You're hanging out in D.C. I'm grilling, right? If I was just going to go in one foul swoop, but doing it over time, again and again and again, I think they're not sharing it because they're taking notes. Being like, how might some of our agents be able to do something? Do something
they
like
might
this?
be.
See, I went grocery shopping today, and with these prices, I'd be trying to steal too. Jokes.
Seafood. Salmon's pretty
lobster.
pricey too.
Yeah, get lobster on it. What's the lobster game like in North Carolina?
I'm not a big lobster guy, so I can't really give a good answer for that one.
It's crabs here in the D.C. area because we're so close to Maryland. So everybody gets
heard
crabs, crab cakes, but lobster. So I went up to Maine in 2024 for my wife's birthday, right? She's like, I want to go to Maine. I was like, I want to go to Maine too. So let's go to Maine for your birthday. So we went out to Maine and we got a lot of lobster. And I was like, people told me like, hey, Maine is like really cheap for lobster. And I was like, all right, bet this is going to be like the price of chicken in D.C. And it was not. It was like $30, right? Like $30 for a lobster roll, $30 for a mac and cheese. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why is this so expensive? And then I got back to D.C. and you could get a half a lobster tail for $70. And I was like, what kind of ruse is this? Because I love me some lobster. Don't get it twisted. There's not a lot of things that I love enough to be paying $70 for an amount that is really not much. I mean, a half a lobster tail is like 4 ounces on a good day, if it's a good lobster.
Yeah.
$70 is insanity to me for that. I did
know
grocery shop today, though.
I need to grocery shop. What this all is making me think about, all the food talk. I'm wondering, what the heck is Linnell going to be up to tomorrow night? So he made pancakes this week.
So Linnell Willingham on
with a
Westwood
knife.
One Sports Night made pancakes and stirred the batter in with a knife. This is on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed to the Westwood One Sports Night YouTube, you got to be subscribed to it. It then created this idea in my mind of on Mondays, because the 2 o'clock hour, we're 11 to 3 a.m. Eastern time. The 2 o'clock hour is when things get a little off the wall a little bit. Guardrails off, right? So you can just kind of go crazy. So we're just going to have him make things during the 1 a.m. hour. I think it would be hilarious. I think he thinks it would be funny. What is a kind of food that is easy enough to cook that you could still actively give sports takes while cooking? Pancakes was an easy one. So I need to find out another one and give him enough time to buy groceries. I don't know that he's a grocery buyer the way that I am. I got lists and I got everything. I don't know if he walks in with a list. So you're going to have to be locked in to Westwood One Sports Night Monday night for that. Thanks to Will Dalton. Thanks to Mike Martinez. I've been Denton Day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you when I see you.
This is Westwood One Sports.